And so you can hold off for when the mayor has the green light to go. I know. I don't have the same modular. I thought it addressed, but it's the lawyer.
But there can also be an occasion when.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'd like to call our April 4th Town Council meeting to order. Could we have a pledge of allegiance, please? Thank you. Roll call.
Mayor Labriola.
Here.
Mr. Moffitt. Here. Mr. Bell. Here. Mr. Berner.
Here.
Heidi Felder.
Yep.
Ms. Tillerson. Hello. I see you.
Here.
Here.
We have one set of minutes for the Town Council meeting of March the 7th. Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second?
Discussion? Comments?
I just have a few typos that I found that I forwarded to Petra. No big deal.
And one or two as well that I will forward.
Okay. Accepting those, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
It is good to see everybody. Another busy agenda, and certainly one of the items is a carryover from the discussion that we had last month, and that deals with a project, major project, the potential for a major project. We discussed it at the council meeting, and Michael and I had a podcast about it, and that has to do with the property on development of Upper Beachwalker. So I was trying to prepare some thoughts about that, but I had received a very nice note from a concerned, interested resident, and asked me the same questions. Why are you doing this? What's this all about? Et cetera, et cetera. And I wrote a response. So I thought maybe I'd start this off by telling you what I responded. Dear, thank you for your note and sharing of your concern. As Mr. As Michael and I explained at our last council meeting, you know, it's difficult for these Southerners to say Labriola. It's equally as difficult for us to. As I explained at our last council meeting, we are in the early stages of a strategic planning process with the partners that will affect the Upper Beachwalker properties, the intersection, and the real estate building and site. We think the building and site are a critical component for this plan to be successful. There is nothing that has been approved by council, but I am asking council for their support to send a letter of intent to the partners indicating our interest and desire to purchase this property. Then this will demonstrate to them and the entire community we view this as important and are seriously considering the acquisition. Time will tell if we can successfully negotiate a price and conditions of sale with the partners and approved by town council. The entire community will be soon involved, and the preliminary plans have been discussed to date. We are just in the very early stages of all this. Hope this helps. Thank you again. So, where are we at in all of that? Well, now, this month, 4 things are going to happen. I'll be talking with Jerry McGee to see at what point we can take some of the conceptual options, some of the conceptual drawings to the Community Association Board. Hopefully we can do that within the next few weeks. We will be contacting the neighborhood HOAs that surround the property to see when we can start making presentations to them. We will have sessions here that will be open to the community at large to be able to come in, so that everybody can start seeing what has been discussed to date. I'm going to encourage, which I probably won't need to, all of our council members to attend as many as all of these sessions as they possibly can. The outcome is twofold. The more community involvement, the more thoughtfulness that can be put into this, I have absolutely no doubt will be a better design. So suggestions will always be valuable. But in addition to the design, I think that input would be important to identify value, a level of value on the acquisition of the real estate building. Value from both the design prospect and the intersection. So it's going to be important for us to hear from all of you in terms of how much you feel there is value in terms of the things that we're looking at. So we will need to get we will hope to get the perceived value from both the building acquisition and the possibility of and we have some conceptual designs for the intersection. Both are expensive. Both are expensive, both the acquisition of the building and certainly what we're looking at in terms of the intersection. In addition, over this period of time, we'll try to get some more quantitative assessment. We have to really fine tune and get, I think, well, we have, but we'll get, I think, probably a better appraisal on the building, more current. This market has changed, even in a relatively short time since we got the previous appraisal. So I think there'll be need to do that. And in terms of the intersection, we need to have the engineers begin to look at the benefits associated. We can see some of the flow, but again, it's expensive. We need to understand better the engineering implications of it. So we'll have qualitative impact and, quite frankly, quantitative impact. Hopefully we can get as much of this done as we can over April, May. I'm not sure exactly how long this is going to take, but I think it's important for all of us who, as your municipal officials, to be able to render a judgment relative to that, render a judgment relative to the acquiring of the building, render a judgment relative to the intersection. As we look at this conceptually, the building has a unique implication. It impacts both. It impacts the design of Upper Beachwalker, the project, and it impacts the intersection. But as I said before, it doesn't come cheaply. So we have to really assess how much of that value, both quantitatively and quantitatively, we want to ascribe to it. Financing will obviously be something that we'll have to take serious discussion with. So that's where we're at right now. Hopefully we can talk, the council can talk later on this afternoon in terms of executive session. There are a little bit more things we need to understand, and I really need, as much as anything, a sense of strategy relative to all of this. But I just wanted to share, that's why it's on the agenda. We'll be hearing more about it. We'll be sending out soon relative to these meetings in April. Hopefully you'll be able to attend, and we encourage everybody's participation. I'm going to turn it over to Michael. I know I must have missed some things, but Michael, can you add, please?
Yes, thank you. I often receive the question from community members, what are our biggest issues? Or in a different way, ask me what my top priorities are to make an impact on this community. And beside my first answer to that question also being, I hope that I can bring, again, more civility and fact-based discussion to the community, it's usually the next two are traffic, finding solutions for traffic, and finding a solution to avoid a second Cape, or overdevelopment, or us looking like Hilton Head, whatever you want to choose. There are so many different phrases that are circling around. what we are discussing here since last March Town Council and what we have discussed with the partners in that respect for several weeks now, in a very, constructive and forward-looking way, really addresses these topic number 2 and topic number 3. There is currently no way, from my point of view, and I guess also from a lot of the experts, to really resolve the traffic issues at the first gate, both in the morning when coming into the island as well as in the afternoon leaving it, without having more options, means land to consider. There is no way to make it sustainable for the next 10, 15, 20 years. At least certainly for the next 5+ years until we are more or less built out on this island. So what we are going to discuss here again for a second time in public this afternoon has a substantial impact on our options to find solutions to mitigate traffic at the first gate. That's one. But interconnected to this, both by desire but also just by facts that we will discuss later this afternoon, you cannot look at this separately. You have to look at the current real estate building and you have to look at Upper Beachwalker parcels. Because only these three things together, the intersection, the real estate building, and the Upper Beachwalker parcels, only when you look at this together, you can find solutions. One is obvious, right? I mean, us acquiring, for example, the real estate building would give us the opportunity to use some of the land for, better ways of traffic routing. But also looking at the Upper Beachwalker Drive gives us a very safe way to reroute our leisure trail that comes from the second hole of Cougar, approaches the first gate at the moment, crosses over right at this intersection and then continues. So bringing the Upper Beachwalker parcels into play gives us a lot more options to route this leisure trail in a very safe way, further south on Beachwalker Drive, etc. So there are so many things, so many reasons why these different aspects are connected to each other that we need to look at this together. And that's what we are trying to do, and that's what we're going to present to you again in more detail this afternoon. Thank you, Mayor.
John?
I only have one thing, and I've debated whether to bring this up or not, but on the agenda, the item number 6 on the agenda says citizens' comments, agenda items only. There's two things that are key in that. One is comments, and the other is agenda items only. It's my impression that the reason that's on here is so that the citizens have an opportunity to give us their, kind of like almost the last chance they have to give us their thoughts and their opinions and so forth on the items we're going to discuss later. To me, it's not a time for us to disagree with the comment that a citizen made or take issue with it. It's to listen. A lot more listening than talking in that section. I think last month, what we experienced was every comment was responded to by one or more council people. And I think that does two things. Number one, in that section, we're not supposed to be arguing with the citizen's comment. It's their opinion. We should include it in our discussion. The other is that it somewhat negates the value of that opinion if we're not going to respect the fact that they can voice their opinion. So what I would like to see, I may not be successful here, is in the citizens' comments, as council, we do more listening there than talking. And we add your comments to our discussion because it's all about the items that are later in the agenda. And there's no point in discussing them until we get to that point, is my opinion. That's all I have.
John? Brad?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. A few things. Maybe I'll just touch upon Councilmember Moffat's last comments. I take his point. It's probably directed at me as much as anything else, since I'm the one that tends to engage with community members. I think it is, my own personal view is it's healthy to have a dialogue and discussion. Now, I would acknowledge that to get into a debate is probably not the appropriate forum, but if a member of the community is willing to be engaged, I think that provides the best opportunity in a public setting to have that kind of discussion and dialogue. If they're not, I would certainly respect that. To the more substantive matter that the mayor and Councilmember Heidensfelder addressed, I appreciate very much the tone and tenor of the mayor's remarks and those of Michael as well. I completely agree that this is an issue that warrants exploration, and indeed it provides an opportunity potentially an opportunity for solving some of the most vexing challenges facing us. There are issues, as you noted, Mayor, with regard to price and utility or use of the parcel should it be acquired. But I think conceptually the idea of the town acquiring a key piece of real estate at the entrance of the island makes a lot of sense. There's a lot of things we have to work through, as you noted. I've been a little bit more cautious than perhaps some of my colleagues with regard to getting a better understanding of some of the issues that are involved, but I think we're evolving in the right direction, and I appreciate the commitment to involve community members and really have an open discussion about all of these issues. What I'm going to focus now very briefly is actually what it is we're going to do today, if anything. I have no issue with, even though I'm generally the resident skeptic, of going into executive session to discuss the potential terms of a letter of intent, a non-binding letter of intent with regard to acquisition of this, of the parcel. That's the type of thing, terms and strategy that are appropriate for executive session. My concern is with regard to the new business action item in this instance, which is actually to authorize the mayor to negotiate the purchase of the Kiawah Island Real Estate Building with regard to a specific letter of intent. The reason for that is we didn't receive a draft of that letter of intent until 8:30 last night. I've had some time to review it over the course of the morning. My view is that letter of intent is deficient and defective in material respects. Not that that can't be addressed, but I'm not sure we have the time today to do that. So while I will certainly support going into executive session and having a robust discussion about the parameters of what would go into a letter of intent, I would not feel at all comfortable approving this specific letter of intent as drafted and presented to us just last night. Couple of other matters, and it somewhat relates to the issue of getting the letter of intent last night. I know staff works very hard, and I don't want to put this on staff because we're all kind of responsible and we've all got to do a better job. But the community itself didn't get notice of all these agenda items until late Friday afternoon. We ourselves, as council members, didn't get the materials attendant to this agenda until late Sunday afternoon. And we didn't get the draft letter of intent until last night. That's certainly something that would, in the business world, would not pass muster. It makes it difficult to prepare appropriately, to consider the public's business, the people's business. And I don't know what the solution is, but the question is, if we are not prepared to have materials to review in an appropriate and a prudent amount of time, should we in the future consider delaying the council meeting? I know it's provided in our ordinances, or delay certain consideration of certain action items. I don't know what the answer is, but my view is that the timing this time has been, is unacceptable. Michael.
Yeah, I want to confirm that I have the same view, Brett. I also voiced that and had a brief discussion already with Stephanie what potential solutions could be. I think we need to understand that, exactly as you said in the beginning, we put a lot of stuff on the shoulders of our staff right now. Actually on our own shoulders as well. I think we all work several hours a day, just on these topics here for the town. But I think there's additional workload that created this, so we need to be mindful. But I agree, and we need to do a much better job here. But I think we also need to help the staff to do a better job in that respect. Stephanie and Petra in particular, I mean, they do this very well, but we need to make sure that we understand what the time limitations are. If the solution is to bring in, additional half-time resource or shift around some responsibilities, I'm sure Stephanie will discuss that over the next couple of days. But it's an issue that we really need to address, Brett. I fully agree.
And thank you for that, Michael. And I just, my view as well, yeah, there is a minimum statutory notice requirement for the public, but we need to do better by our constituents as well, as getting information to them in advance as well, so they can figure out their busy schedules, they can prepare those citizen comments that Councilmember Moffitt referred to in a timely manner as well. The last item I will mention, and I'm not going to belabor this or get into the substance now. I know there are some people here that have raised an issue, but there was a matter in which there were questions raised by a number of members of the community with regard to whether a waiver was properly granted by the town with regard to a particular piece of real estate. And that was almost exactly 2 months ago. And unfortunately, there have been, the people that have raised the issue have had to come back to the town and town staff repeatedly to try to get clarity about what transpired, what the basis of the action was, what the consequences were if the action was improper, and what to do about it going forward. Again, I don't want to belabor it here, but it's become palpably clear that the waiver was not properly granted. That's fine, mistakes are made. But for whatever reason, and it seems to be almost a congenital defect in some respects, the town tries to throw up every argument or justification to justify the action was taken, rather than simply acknowledging that a mistake may have been made. Let's try to understand what the consequences are, and let's figure out how to make sure it doesn't happen again. And again, we don't need to get into the substance here, but I think this is another instance where, from a council perspective and a staff perspective, we do need to do a better job of responding very thoughtfully to legitimate questions that are raised by members of the public about actions that the town has taken. Make sure that we are on legally sound ground. If we've made a mistake, if we haven't, if we believe we have not and can defend that, great. If we've made a mistake, let's just acknowledge that, figure out what the ramifications, remedy, or consequences are, and then figure out how to move forward. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
We are blessed with a multitude of attorneys that have decided, for one reason or another, to identify Kiowa Island as their point of retirement. We welcome them all. Quite frankly, as mayor, and I think Stephanie would say the same, we rely on that attorney, his co-counsel, to provide guidance. This is going to be a very interesting debate, as more attorneys may join this community with more opinions about just about everything. I welcome them all, but you have to understand the balance. So I'm not defending or explaining, I'm just saying that's what we're dealing with here. So, Russ, anything to add?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. A couple things. I just wanted to emphasize, please, that this letter of intent, I want to make sure the community understands what it is. It is not an agreement to purchase. We're not there yet. It's just an agreement that we're going to find out what the price is for this property. That's all we're doing. It's step one in the development of this potential purchase agreement. If we do have a reasonable price for purchasing this property, at that point, we will then enter into our engineering studies for the traffic, and we will then enter into solicitation with the community of what they would like to see done or not done, et cetera, and so forth. But I just want you to make sure that we will enter into those communications and due diligence and engineering studies only if the purchase price is going to be reasonable. Otherwise, we're wasting money in hiring engineers to do work that would be wasteful. Moving on from that, the other thing I wanted to bring up was I'm the liaison with the Safety Committee, and there are a couple of interesting comments that came out of last week's meeting. And I'm bringing it up only because there was a lot of things that were discussed, but one of them is the e-bikes. And I don't want to go down a road of what my opinion is or what my opinion is not. However, what I wanted to share with you are some data that came from the fire chief and EMS. What they both indicated is that they've had a number of calls of accidents just with bikes, just with bicycles, not electric bikes, just with bikes colliding with each other. And they've indicated to me at this meeting that some of the issues are that the bicyclists, again, we're not talking e-bikes yet, are passing walkers or children or whoever they may be, and the person they're passing is walking into the path. Both the EMS and the fire chief indicated that the e-bikes is going to make this instance occur much more often because they're quiet. That is their opinion. I'm not saying it's mine, but I just wanted the community to understand that that's the feedback that we've already received from the fire chief and EMS. That's it, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Michael. Russ. Citizen comments.
Alex Fernandez, 418 Snow Egret. Mr. Mayor, first I wanted to, you're not the only one that has difficulty with Michael's last name, by the way. So you're not alone.
Hey, a lot of Germans have.
I want to address the issue with reference to what you've all been talking about with reference to the purchase of the property, the Kiawah Island real estate property. I think I agree with some of the comments the mayor made with reference of having community support. But I believe that before we proceed, we should have at least 2 independent current appraisals of the property. I think going into negotiations in a way blindly without knowing what we're talking about, are we talking about $1 million, are we talking about $50 million, I think it's unreasonable for the community to support. I think we need to have at least 2 independent current appraisals for the community to be aware of what we're talking about. Secondly, the amount of time and the amount of comments at the last meeting, as well as today, of the value of this property, I think has increased the expectations of the partners. Every time we say something favorable about the property, it goes up $1 million. I can assure you. I mean, we know that, they're good business people. So we need to be sure that we have 2 independent appraisals. So when we go in there, we say, if you're expecting 50, I'm sorry, but market-wise says it's only 5. So, I'm sorry that we spoke so well about your property, but we really have to pay market, to be really in that area. So please, before you authorize or when you authorize the mayor, also authorize 2 independent current appraisals of the property. Thank you. And you don't have to make a comment because John doesn't want to say the dialogue.
Thank you, Alex.
So we should have a referendum that it's a dump and we're just going to take it off their hands. Yes, ma'am.
Maura McIlvaine, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I'm going to start at the building since that's the current topic. Mr. Mayor, you said you wanted everyone to know where we are right now. I'm not sure I know much more about where we are than I did last month, except I do appreciate Councilperson Berner's comment that this is to figure out what the price is. As someone who practiced law, I'm one of those many people who moved to the island who did that. You don't need an LOI to find out what the price is. An LOI tends to be the agreement right before an agreement to purchase. And if it's not crafted very carefully, it can have a lot of liabilities built in or consequences built in that are maybe unintended, but still would bind the town. In order to determine, though, what the price is or what it would be to the town, tell me what use you're going to make of it. What's the value to the town without any declaration of we're going to use it for X or we're going to use it for Y? We might have to rebuild the building. It may not have a load-bearing wall. We may have to spend $2 million renovating it. Those all go into the value. Those all go into the price. And I don't know if the price is reasonable till I know what use you want to make of the building. So I'm not sure. You seem to be starting kind of at the back end.
No, we don't.
I also wanted to talk about the Performing Arts Center. I see that the Phase 1 is back on for discussion. I was here for the special meeting. I was here for the town council retreat, and I've reviewed the Phase 1 needs assessment. And I have pages of everyone's comments from the original meeting on how the first Phase 1 presentation didn't do what everyone needed it to do. I am not convinced that this needs assessment gets you very much farther and doesn't answer the questions of whether we really have a market. If you look at the numbers, it doesn't really tell you that many more people from Kiowa are going to use or need this facility. It tells you they hope to draw from, is it a 60-mile radius or 60-mile diameter? This is clearly not baked well enough to proceed on it. I think that's all I have. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
John Grierson, 109 Bobcat Lane, Riverview community adjacent to the property in discussion. As president of that HOA, we have severe concerns about any alternative use for that building. We are directly affected. It abuts our property. I appreciate, Mayor, I sent my notes in. You sent a response back that we would be included in the meetings as those begin. I don't really know where in that process that is, but kind of going from the idea that there's any different use of that, we would like to be included in that. The history I have, and I've been here for 4 years, part of Preserve Kiowa and all these others, is that for whatever reason, it goes down a path, and then the community gets involved, and it changes direction. We'd like to preempt that. We'd like to be involved from the beginning. Any discussions, anything we can be involved in, look forward to hearing from you. But any alternative uses we're concerned with, and as you said, it also relates to the other side of Beach Walker Drive. And again, as a developer, I'm sure they want to bring it together, get additional units over there, but it all goes hand in hand. So any discussions we'd like to be included in. Thank you.
Thank you. Just to clarify, John, that's a good point. Excuse me, I'm going to respond.
I never suggested you don't respond.
Focal point,
Use it judiciously.
this building right now is an integral part of the design of Upper Beach Walker and the intersection. Those would be the two main reasons. That's why I talked about value. The use of the building, that building, if everything was just green lights go, we're probably talking 3 years, 3.5, a long ways away before this would be done. So I'm just saying, from my previous experience, we would have people who would be, we would have use of the building task forces up the, yin-yang that would be talking about uses of the building. So we could throw things out there in terms of a use of the building just throw them out there. And I don't mean to say they would be meaningless, but I'm just saying that we're not buying that building to use that, I just wanted to qualify that if I haven't. It's the effect it has on the design of the project and an effect it has on the design, the potential design of the project and the potential design of the intersection. I just wanted to qualify that.
No, I appreciate
if I-
that and understand that. I do think, though, you're talking about a lot of money for a piece of property that you're going to buy with a hope to solve some other problems and don't have an answer to what that looks like yet. What I'd ask you with the amount of money you're spending, though, have you looked at alternatives beyond that property, going back up the road, the resort property, where you can have a proper entrance, you can control traffic and maybe eliminate everything in that area instead of trying to take one little piece and solve a lot of problems by putting a whole new gate, whatever it is. You know, there's probably other options that I said, yeah, broaden the view and make sure you check everything.
Understand.
Maybe to this point, John, if I may.
Of course.
If I need to say whether people respond, I'll take that responsibility.
It's not even the attorneys talking yet.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Michael.
Okay, thank you. This is part of the due diligence that we talked about earlier, but maybe a little bit dependent on how we end the day here today. But if we come to meaningful conclusions, not decisions, but conclusions of how we will proceed, I can promise you that you will receive a letter in the coming days to be invited for a communication and feedback, or whatever you want to call it, session with your HOA, the same with Inlet Cove, the same with, help me again with the other one. Say again? The Point. The Point, but also the one in the south. I apologize for those
I
that
think Oyster Rake had also indicated.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Brad. So that is absolutely going to happen. If we move forward with this after today, you will be spending some time in these meetings, that's for sure.
Thank you.
I promise you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, Todd Bonet, 3532 Shipwatch. I'm also a board member of Preserve Kiowa. You know, first of all, I want to thank you, the mayor, town council, and town staff for all of the engagement activities that are going on. You know, I'm relatively new to being active in the community, so I'm assuming that some of this has gone on, but not all of it. But the podcasts, the drop-ins, Michael, the meetings that you've been arranging, I think are very helpful to increase engagement throughout the community. Some of the questions I have about the, the proposed building purchase, I'll echo what John talked about is, are there other locations that can be considered? You know, one question I have, and I don't know if there's what discussion there has been with the traffic consultant, but if we drive, welcome traffic to that building, I don't see how that necessarily solves congestion at that intersection. And Michael, you've talked about, are there technology solutions to allow guests to, in a sense, breeze through? If we were to move traffic further up, Andale West, commandeer the putt-putt, land, to, get people registered, find some way for them to get some type of breeze through pass. To me, that would be a way of improving the solution there. So again, I ask you all to consider other locations, other solutions. The one thing I guess I would suggest if you are to move forward with this property is the one question I have from a traffic standpoint is for the people that would enter the real estate parking lot and then probably come back through Beachwalker, or people coming up Beachwalker. We're going to have, people trying to negotiate that intersection. So one question I would have is, would it be possible to add a third entrance lane, in a sense, a turn-only lane coming off of Beachwalker, going through the gate, so that the people coming out of Beachwalker, turning, onto the island, would not have to negotiate that intersection in the same way. And the reason I bring it up is it's my understanding that part of the land just beyond the gate on the right side of the drive is owned by the partners as well. So the question would be, would you also want to negotiate an option on that? I think there's other land further close to the guard shack that you would have to acquire. But as you're looking at this, consider whether or not there's an opportunity to utilize these negotiations to, in a sense, maximize your optionality. The other thing that I guess I have a question on is when we look at what this purchase is relative to the capital needs of the town over the next 10 years, where does this fit? does the community understand what the capital needs of the town are going to be over the next 10 years? You know, Mayor, you touched on the intersection itself. You know, we have the new traffic circle, you know, that's been talked about. You know, I'm actually, I have a second home as well in Highlands. I actually believe that the Performing Arts Center is something that, you know, could add value to this community. I think the two towns have very similar, you know, characteristics in terms of being, you know, second hometowns. And vacation rental properties. So I think it's something that's worth considering. But I bring that up in the context of what does this particular project do? And I'll use a term I've used in finance in terms of potentially crowding out other possibilities. You know, obviously the town does have some cash, and I commend you for what you're doing and trying to make sure that you're ready for a catastrophic event. But I think when we take a look at the funds that you do have, and you start backing out the things that you actually have money to spend, backing out the catastrophic fund or reserve you might have, any specific limitations you have on any tourism-related funds. You know, how much money does the town actually have, and how does that match up relative to what the capital requirements are? But again, I want to commend you for what I consider to be improved engagement, and I really want to I look forward to having a chance to continue to talk to you. Thank you.
Other comments? Yes, ma'am.
Hi, I'm nervous. This is my first time speaking to you. My name is Kristen Thompson, and I'm at 101 Schulberg Court, and I'm a member of the Arts Council, and that's what I'd like to speak to today. What I've observed over the last 2 years has been a challenge and both an opportunity with this funding. One thing is the challenge we are facing is we have sold out performances. We're not able to place a lot of our programs into the buildings that are existing here on Kiowa. It's difficult I have 2 programs that I'm trying to place for next year. I've been having a lot of challenges with them, both with dealing with the resort in terms of finding a location and also with Kika. So those are 2 things that we just don't have enough space, and yet we sell out mainly to island members, but to Kiowa residents. But we've been selling out our programs, and they've been very well received. So that's one point. The opportunity I noticed is I was in Massachusetts last couple weeks ago and attended a non-professional drama, and it was very well received. It was lots of fun. It was a musical of Mean Girls, and I know we have amateur people that would like to participate in some sort of amateur plays and things like that. We have, I'm also on Garden Club, and we have trouble getting spaces for garden opportunities. I only could place 2 programs at Kika this year. So it's a lot of competition. There's a lot of new residents here, and we're all competing for our programs to be put forth. So I'd just like to speak in favor of the Arts Council moving forward with the Arts Center. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Any other comments? Yes.
Dave DiStefano, 31 Burroughs Hall. I'm speaking on my own, not as a member of the board. I don't have that authority today. With respect to the intersection and purchasing the building, I agree that whatever the use is determines the value of a building. Right now, it's office space. And as the mayor said, this could take 3.5, 4 years. That means the intersection isn't going to be done for 3.5, or 4 years. And the community's waiting for that intersection to be improved, particularly the outbound lane. The outbound lane's not going to change no matter what we do with the inbound lanes. So I think the town should move forward to get that straight through outbound lane going, because that's a daily jam up. And I do know that in the few discussions I've had about that building, is one of the things is it's going to be kind of a pass building where people get their passes, et cetera, et cetera. And probably the entity that's most concerned about that in the town is Kika. So Kika's got to be a major participant in anything that goes on with this, because it's all about getting through the gate. and the passes, et cetera. Technology changes very rapidly, et cetera. So I just wanted to make sure that all the proper parties are involved at the very highest level of this endeavor. Thank you.
John, can I comment?
Keep it brief, though.
Yes, I will. Dave, thank you. One, I couldn't agree more that, we need to get away from these little flyers that have to be printed out. There's technology out there that can make this so much easier. So I think the more we have been talking about this, I think it became more clear that that is not going to be the main purpose of that building going forward. There might be people that are not, tech savvy enough to work with QR codes or whatever the solution is. So there might be a small percentage of people that still need to have that physical thing. But I believe that we will talk about this later. There's quite some appealing ideas for the use of this building. Some have already started to mushroom on IKEA, but I think there's a lot of interesting stuff out there, and that's also why we said we need to go out now, to the community and gather that input. And as the last comment, and as the mayor said, the outreach to KICA is very high on our next steps, that's for sure.
Well, and I just would follow up, Michael, that one thing, if we've gotten very, very rough schemes or notional proposals from the engineering firm as to potential alternative solutions, some of those might entail not having any building there at all. You would actually use that for alternative roadway. And even if those don't work, at the end of the day, it might conclude that the building in the long run is a white elephant, and you don't have any particular utility. That doesn't mean necessarily, even if you concluded that it wouldn't make sense for the town to own and acquire that property. Just as everybody else has mentioned, it really factors into what price you're willing to pay.
Right.
Correct, I agree.
Yes.
When you plan on talking to KICA, are you envisioning some form of cost-sharing arrangement? And Roger, I would, Roger is still here, I would, include the resort as well. When you look at what the solution is here, we're trying to solve the needs of residents, but also, if we look at, probably the elephant in the room, it's really not the residents that create the issue, it's really the guests.
No, we are not. There's laws are really quite explicit relative to public and private. So this side of the gate is public. So everything, the funding, the ownership would be the town. The other side of the gate is private. I think we have to, it's kind of sacrosanct. I think we have to be very careful with that.
Okay,
That doesn't mean that there couldn't be landlord lessee arrangements or, something like that. But in terms of ownership, no. I thank you all for your comments. You can see how valuable you are. And I certainly understand and appreciate we've put you at a huge disadvantage. You haven't seen anything. So I look forward to next month's meeting. I look forward to you having the opportunity to spend time with Mark Permar, who's sitting quietly over there. As we begin to roll this stuff out, you get a chance to see it, understand it, question it, challenge it. So I think we'll have better discussion, not better, we'll have even more constructive discussions in May once you have a chance to get involved in it. Proclamation, Kiowa Conservancy. Is anybody here? There's folks from the Conservancy? Hi. This is wonderful. It's Earth Day was April 22nd, 1970, 53 years ago. So this is a proclamation supporting the Conservancy, of which we all thoroughly are so proud of. Is there anything else you want me to do with this proclamation?
Mayor, typically you'll go ahead and read the proclamation.
I think in the sake of time, we have the utmost respect and pride for it. So I'm just going to, please take a moment and read through it and kind of move on, okay? Okay. Ruthie, we have a special guest, and it's been commented upon already about the feasibility study for our Performing Arts Center. Our very talented Ruthie Foster is here to introduce our guest presenter and to tell you a little bit more about this study.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. For the past few months, the town has partnered with Web Management Services on a study to determine the feasibility of creating an arts and cultural center on Kiowa Island. Oh, is it? Sorry, is this better? So the study is divided into two phases, with phase one targeting the needs assessment. Back in December, you'll remember we had the consulting team here collecting information and community feedback, and they were also involved in the town council planning retreat as well. Can you all hear me a little bit better now? Okay. Today, Duncan Webb is back to present the phase one findings and preview what's to come in phase two. At the end of his presentation, members of town council will have a chance to ask any questions. So, if you're ready, Duncan?
Thank you, Ruthie. Welcome,
Thank
Duncan.
you.
Thank you, Ruthie. Mayor, members of council, citizens, thank you for giving me the opportunity to come and share our work with you. As Ruthie says, we are management consultants to people who build and operate theaters. I've spent the last 34 years roaming around North America, working for cities and schools and developers and arts organizations, helping them think about building, fixing, and operating different kinds of theaters and other performing arts and cultural spaces. We do these feasibility studies, business plans, and strategic plans, and we are now starting our 500th project in our 26th year. So we are presenting today at a midpoint in a process, and the work that we've done to this point we call the needs assessment, which is essentially saying what, if anything, makes sense for this community. Is there a need, and what are the market opportunities? And there's an extensive process that we've been through. You've seen the full sort of deck of about 100 slides that sort of details the process. There was a lot of community input collected, a lot of research here, but in other places, in order to understand what the opportunities might be. Before talking about Kiowa, just to say it's a crazy time to be doing this. There's been tremendous upheaval in the arts sector through the pandemic and coming out of it. But there's several important trends, and I sort of often characterize it as sort of bad news and good news. The bad news is we are worried about audiences, particularly younger audiences, and particularly audiences for traditional disciplines like opera and ballet and classical music. We're concerned about the fragility of nonprofit arts organizations, particularly coming out of the pandemic. And we're worried about fundraising. It's very competitive these days for artists and arts organizations to raise the money necessary to sustain themselves. On the other side, we are optimistic about several things. One, the sort of rapid growth of active arts participation as opposed to simply passive participation, meaning join the theater company or sing in the choir as opposed to simply sit in the audience. Secondly, the tremendous growth of arts education and arts in education, not just what's going on in the schools, but how the nonprofit art sector has gone aggressively into the world of education and outreach to impact their communities. And finally, that we are finally at a point where we are developing strong tools and language to express a value proposition for the arts. What can the arts do for your community, whether that's about economic development or driving tourism or improving public health? Our job is to determine what community needs are and how the arts and arts facilities might respond to those needs. So on to Kiowa. We did a big set of interviews confidentially, and as you might expect, people were not reluctant to express strong opinions for and against what we should do, what we shouldn't do. There is a sense of demand. There is a sense that current facilities are inadequate, both physically in terms of access. There's concern about location and parking and traffic.
And I think the most important message we got was it is important not just to have the people who want to come to a theater supporting this project, but it needs to respond to the broader community. So what matters to all the voters and taxpayers and citizens here? What is the project that they can support because of the value and the impacts that it has on your community? So we looked at audiences, growth, size, characteristics, demographics, geodemographics. We used some of your Placer AI data to understand visitors, who they are, where they come from, and what they like. We did an exercise of mapping audiences. This is a map that shows sort of the local market, but we also looked at a series of Arts Council events and where those ticket buyers come from that points to this conundrum. Yes, of course, the market that we care the most about are the citizens, voters, and residents of your community. However, in order for any arts facility to succeed, it has to attract ticket buyers from as wide an area as it can. And it turns out that in this market area, about 80% of Arts Council event attenders come from within a 60-mile drive time. So we felt that even though we're not so concerned about responding to the demands of those people, we want them in our audiences. So we tried to understand that larger market area and what characteristics and potential there is there. So we did a number of tools. One of them is this thing called the Market Potential Index, which looks at the propensity and capacity of people living within a defined market area. So in this case, both Kiowa and the 60-minute drive time. And what it tells us is that there are a lot of people here, many more than the national average, likely to attend classical music, to attend dance, to go to an art gallery, to support a museum, and also to go to the theater. We did another exercise where we took the work that the NEA does every 5 years. They do this survey of public participation in the arts, and based on educational attainment, which is a reasonable predictor of arts participation, we're able to project how many ticket buyers there might be in our market area, the 60-minute drive time, for all of these disciplines. And we feel confident that this is a fairly significant base of ticket buyers from which we might draw audiences. We also looked at visitors, and Kiowa is unique here. This is not Myrtle Beach. This is a very different kind of community that is attracting seasonal residents, weekly visitors of a particular demographic from a particular place. And it would seem from what we've learned of those people that their interest is in the idea of a destination. So, and that sort of matches what we see in many communities. People want to go to a place where they can do more than one thing. So it's go to the theater, go for a drink, have a meal, shop, visit a gallery. So the idea of sort of a multifaceted experience that includes an arts event is attractive. The other thing we tried to hang our hat on was the question of what does Kiowa have relative to other resort communities that are either comparable to you or perhaps aspirational, places that you might like to be like in terms of your community. So we looked for comparable places. We started with Highlands, which is nearby and which everyone knows well and has this sort of terrific example of a community arts center. But then we added Hilton Head, Martha's Vineyard, the Hamptons, and Vail Beaver Creek, and catalog this very extensive set of arts facilities that all of these other communities have. So Kiowa, there is no purpose-built arts facility. In these other places, Highland has one, but the others have 4, 5, and 6 arts facilities. They all tend to start with this sort of 300 to 500 seat community arts center type building, but then the number of them also add an outdoor component, which is interesting to us. No. I can get rid of that. Okay. So another critical part of this, and probably the hardest work for us, was understanding the demand for spaces on the part of potential users. So artists and arts organizations in and around the community that need and want something more than they currently have. So we interviewed groups and we sent out surveys to groups. We followed up with them because it was hard to sort of get a strong sense of this. And members of council have sort of quite reasonably said, you know, you haven't put a
you haven't attached the rent to these numbers yet. So of course, they're all sort of aspirational and optimistic. And that is probably the case. But whenever we were testing their demand, we did try to make it clear to them that it's not free, that there is going to be a cost of access, which is something we are going to explore with them, hopefully, in the months to come. But I do like that there is a good set of demand across different disciplines, music, dance, theater. I did manage to resolve the question of Kika. They had responded to the survey by suggesting demand for dates on the part of all the groups they are turning away. So they themselves are not a user of spaces, but the numbers that they put in were, here are all the dates that we're turning away that we think a new space might accommodate. So I've taken them off of this summary. Even doing so, what I see is kind of a reasonable level of demand at two sort of capacity ranges. One is that 300 to 500 seat range, and the other is down sort of plus or minus 100 seats. So those seem to be the two spaces that are most interesting to us. The other element of demand is this idea of building collaborative relationships to drive programming. The way these buildings succeed is by partnering. And the partnership opportunities exist here with your school districts, with the senior living facility, new, and also with the new medical facility because of the opportunities for educational programs, programs around the arts and health, and programs with kids and seniors, daytime, evening, weekends, camps, and so on. We did 4 inventories of facilities, looking at performance spaces, meeting and event spaces, film, gallery, and exhibition spaces, and arts program spaces, trying to identify gaps and opportunities. Of course, the one we went to first was the question of this performance space. What is the gap? And this is a matrix that we use to try and identify needs. And on the vertical axis is our rating of quality of all the existing spaces in the local and regional market, and then seating capacity across the horizontal axis. So there are gaps up at the higher capacity ranges, but we always encourage our clients to start with the smallest pieces that make sense. And to us, it is that kind of 3 to 4, maybe 500 seats at a higher capacity, a higher quality level that potentially fills that circle on the matrix. So the fourth issue is then relating this project to some of the goals that you've set for your community. We do think there is a potential alignment there, using the arts and culture to promote social health, attracting visitors and residents, supporting the housing market by attracting younger demographic through quality of life opportunities for them. So on that basis, we conclude that there is a potential market. There are audiences. There are lots of folks who have the propensity to participate. There are gaps in the current inventory of facilities. There is demand at a couple of capacity levels for some other spaces, and we see potential alignment with local and regional goals. So on that basis, we've recommended several pieces. And at this point, we're not saying if they're all contained within one building, because they could be physically distributed as opposed to being in one place. But the pieces are that 300 to 400 seat main space that's good for music, dance, film, speakers, flexible seating, strong handicapped accessibility, strong technology, and great acoustics. We also like the idea of adding a second multipurpose space, which works for smaller performances, plus or minus 100 seats, but also meeting and events, rehearsals, teaching, and then some other pieces that could be around that, other rehearsal space, classroom space, exhibition space. It would be great if there was an opportunity to have an outdoor component around it. It should have strong food and beverage capabilities, great backstage, and as I've already said, this could all be within one building, or it could be distributed to create some kind of a district to sort of disperse arts pieces within a more sort of urban area. So we did a lot of research on comparable projects to inform this. I've added in this most recent version of the deck stories from a couple of places. Highlands, I think a number of you have already been to. A great sort of story of how they started with fixing up an old church and then added this new building to it. Fairly cost-effective building, a great source of pride in their community these days. Why did that just happen? Whoever is my tech person, why is my screen going black? Oh. Okay, well,
Doctor, are you looking for your other slides?
yep.
Okay.
Right.
And the other thing that is unique about Highlands is that there are 2 or 3 what I call anchor families from the standpoint of large donations to the community. You know, have you evaluated whether or not there's that type of, philanthropic support in the area to be able to bootstrap
Right.
investment like this?
So there are a number of things we're not addressing yet. One is the sort of the physical development strategy. The other is fundraising feasibility. And our experience is we try and keep a little bit of separation between our work and the question of, is the money there to support the project? So if I can get there, I'll describe at the end point of this how we move to those.
Is that it?
Keep going. Oh, yep, great.
Okay, let me full screen it, sorry. Yep.
Okay. All right, I can breathe again. So then another example, the Shailin Liu, which is a beautiful little 300-seat theater that opened 10 years ago in Rockport, an hour, sort of a summer town, an hour from Boston. Beautiful little space that was built, it's actually a new building built on an historic Main Street that has a very successful summer program, great educational programs that work year-round in that community. And in all of these cases, I've provided you some examples of the cost, the funding, how they've split it between private sector and public sector funding, and the operating model. So, so what we've done with this work to date is essentially set a direction. So we think that the idea to test is several pieces: a theater, a smaller theater, and some other elements that might be around it or nearby, and outdoor spaces. And what we would like to do now is to advance that concept from a physical perspective, an operating perspective, and a financial perspective. So our partners, Theater Consultants Collaborative, what they will do is take the work that we've done and turn it into what's called a space program, which is a description of all the rooms that are in this building and the space that are required. We'll gross it up, can think about the footprint or the footprints to do it, and then they will develop preliminary cost estimates around that. And while Robert is doing that, I will be writing the business plan, which says, if you build this set of facilities, here's how you program them, here's how you operate them, and here's how you financially sustain them. And here's where the work with the local arts community becomes a lot more sort of tangible and real, and we get to talk about rent and try and practically build a calendar of events in a theoretical building for the first 5 years of operations. So that is the work still to come. It's important that it happens in parallel because while Robert might say, oh, I really don't want to add a fly tower on that theater because it adds $1 million to the budget, I would say, but Robert, that gives us another 50 days a year of activity, which drives additional economic impact, so we should think about that. So these perspectives of physical, operational, and financial all need to be considered together. Now, That's the work that should happen next, but you all expressed a keen interest to know what you were getting into. And Robert, along with Theater Consultants Collaborative, very graciously has agreed to sort of give you a little taste of what this project might mean from a physical perspective. So Robert said, all right, if we develop that thing, Duncan, that you're talking about, maybe there's about 5,600 square feet of public space. That 300-seat theater could be about 8,000 square feet. Another sort of backstage support, 3,200 square feet. Small theater, 4,800 square feet. A couple of extra classrooms in the backstage, 2,400. So that adds up to about 24,000 gross square feet. Then let's apply some very rough construction costs to that. And what Robert has done is set a ranges. It could be $500 a square foot, or it could be potentially $800 a square foot. And I'm sure any of you in this world would know how perilous it is today to try and estimate construction costs. So Robert has sort of put it, bracketed as a kind of a low and a high. And which, if you take those construction costs and then you add 30% more for soft costs, all the fees and permits and things that fixtures, furniture, and equipment that need to be in that building, there's basically a cost range from between 15.6 million and 24.9 million. And Robert has also, because he's worked on a couple of projects recently, given us these reference points, both Highlands and another project he recently completed up in Cornelius, North Carolina, sort of bookending those of 18 to $25 million projects. Again, who knows, between now and the date when this project might get bid out to contractors, we'd have to build in some escalation there, but just to give you a sense of the order of magnitude of projects you might be considering. And with that, I would be pleased to answer any questions you might have.
All right, Duncan, I have a number. I'm going to kick it off. I'd love to have a facility here. My challenge is being the engineer in the group or the construction guy in the group. We all know, living here in the island, you can't build anything at 500 a foot, except maybe an outhouse. If anything, the low range of the facility is going to be the $800 a foot, and it's probably even going to be higher than that. Just a point of comparison. Plus, and you have to add to that the $5 million for the land. So we're over 30 million. I think from my own construction estimating background, I think that's a reasonable number. I don't yet have an understanding of what the operating costs will be. I would love to know, or actually I really need to know what that number is going to be, at least for all the facilities that you referenced on slide 12. Are they operating at a positive or negative number? I suspect negative, because then we're going to have to continue to pay monies over and above the construction costs. I need to know what that number is. And then where is the money going to come from? We need to have a financial kind of model so we can understand that. And I bring that up because a lot of people talk about all of the money we have. Well, we really don't. In communications the last month or so, the communities down in Florida, Sanibel, they got hit hard by a hurricane. They spent $25 million to date, and they have more to spend. And that's not including the bridge repair. We have 30 million in surplus, which is a lot of money. But if we have one hurricane coming through, it's gone. And then how do we pay for this? And so we need to have that kind of cost analysis. And that's, and again, I wanted to emphasize, the first comment I meant is I'd love to have this facility. I just need to wrap my head around the numbers.
Right. So again, that's the work to come. Robert has very graciously given you a preview of how he develops the capital budget, but he's not gone into that, he's not rolled up his sleeve and looked specifically at construction costs on Kiowa Island. We wanted to give you a sense of what the order of magnitude of this project was, and the business plan that I am hoping to do specifically addresses the operating budget.
Right. And
how
that's
you
a great
sustain
start.
facilities relative to these other communities.
It's a great start, but I'm really not even exaggerating. I really don't think we could build anything less than 800 a foot. I really don't, on Kiowa.
Russ, if I could chime in here, I'd actually had conversations, extensive conversations, the Art Council liaison with Duncan and his team, and also the other consultant he referenced. I raised, and Duncan had to put up with my pointed questions time and again on a number of these same issues, and I had kind of the same degree of skepticism. When the consultant originally came with us, he said 400 to 600, and I said, no, that's just not enough. That's actually his experience of what it costs to build elsewhere, but I said the same thing.
Correct.
And so he put in the 800 and maybe more than that. I think it was around 800 for the most recent build of the Kane Center in near Charlotte. So whether that's more comparable to Key Island or Key Island's even more, it's a legitimate question. But we pressed on exactly that point.
Great.
The other thing to note is with regard to one of the things we've been talking about and exploring more generally is potential siting. There may or may not be land acquisition cost. I mean, there is sufficient space, for example, on the municipal center land here for a facility of this size. There have also been, the extraordinarily high-level discussions with like Edens and Riverstone, and there you have a number of potential different models that include, simply we'll build it and you lease it, or we'll simply do a slab lease and you build it and lower operating cost. So those are all good questions I think we need to explore. And I might get into this a little bit further. The question is, are we kind of at a point, in my mind, where we've kind of crossed the threshold of ascertaining some degree of feasibility that makes sense to go forward? The one other couple facts I would note, and originally this actually had started out as kind of the initial proposal a little higher in seating capacity, for example, which obviously raises potential construction cost, and it came down to kind of the 300. That seemed like the sweet spot for a lot of others. Staff has just informed me that our average attendance right now at events is 216, and that's at substandard venues that they're not very comfortable. They are hard to get to in some cases, don't have, eating or drinking before or after. And we've had a couple that had 400 or 500 or 600 in attendance. So it does seem like there's some demand. We've got to be, I think you're absolutely right, extraordinarily mindful of what the capital cost would be. But the other thing I would note, just as a fact, is we've supported the entire arts program right now just with town money. Just with town money. And there's probably got to be some level of support beyond that. They are in these other communities that have done this all very successfully.
Yeah, I don't challenge the demand. Clearly, there is a demand, and I'm part of the people that would love to see it. There's no question about it. But I have to be fiscally responsible being on town council.
Absolutely. So
I just want to see how the numbers will work out.
So, Mr. Webb, when on the phase that you've finished gets us to the point where you believe it is feasible. So are you saying that what Robert is working on now is much of what these guys are talking about in terms of trying to ascertain the more specific construction cost?
Right.
But then you're going to do some things that will be the more specific operating costs and fundraising and all of that?
So I'll just say it slightly differently. The point we've reached now is that we think we've got an idea worth testing. We think we've got some pieces that we think make sense from a market perspective that respond to needs. Now what we've got to do is figure out what are you getting to physically, operationally, and financially in order that you can do something that will succeed and deliver the value you want to your community. So the work that Robert did here, he was sort of cheating a little bit.
Kind of a thumbnail.
It was a kind of a thumbnail thing, and made me nervous right at the beginning, and, Russell's comments make that clear, that's probably not a good number here. So Robert needs to do more work in Kiowa to understand what are the right construction cost numbers and ranges that are appropriate in this community in order to have something that you are confident that you know what you're getting into, that you can then take out to fundraising specialists and others to see if the funding is out there through some combination of public sector and private sector to build, but also to sustain, because sustainability.
And that's then the second phase of the work, is to.
Right, that is the work to come.
That was two questions. That was part of the original scope. It's a two-phase project, correct?
Correct.
And, okay. The 219 days relative to about 60% of the year, based upon those surveys, it would be occupied. That's a good rule of thumb? To just think something like this could be used
Well,
60% of the
it's-
time?
Right, those are total days of demand for all spaces. So if you looked at just the mid-size, that 300 to 400 seat space, it's about 140 days of activity. And the 100-seat space, it's less than that. So that 140 days to me is a reasonable place to start. It's probably not, you would want a building to be busier than 3 days a week. So we have to think about what are the other elements of demand and program that help to animate the building.
So what's a rule of thumb? 60% occupancy, 80%?
So a busy building is anywhere over 250 days, because there's always turnover days, there's maintenance days. It can't be busy 365 days a year, but once you get up close to 300 days a year, that's a very busy building.
70% occupancy.
But Duncan, when you say busy days, occupied days, that's not necessarily performing arts or performances. That's utilization of the building by somebody who's renting the space.
Right.
Yeah, because you go through, and I've gone through so many of these other, like the Villar Center that Michael's familiar with, Highlands, and a whole host of others. You go on their websites and they have, what the cost is to lease the lobby, the stage, the ancillary rooms for wedding rehearsals or rehearsal dinners, receptions, private corporate events, and what have you. And that seems to be a big source of revenue for a lot of these places.
Ruthie, I lost track. Does the second phase, is that something that comes back to the Ways and Means Committee?
No, we've already voted to go for everything, but it's a decision. We can technically help me out, Mr. Moffett.
We agreed originally on the contract that would cover the first two phases.
Oh, okay.
And so, don't let me put words in your mouth, but what you're doing now is you're saying, we finished the first phase and we're getting ready to embark on the second phase to get some more specificity on these dollars and cents components.
Right.
Okay, so we have approved it.
Right.
Oh, okay.
You have approved, but I've always found that it is a professional courtesy to say, here's what we discovered in the first round of work, which is attempting to set a direction for the project. And because sometimes a community will say, you're giving us a project that doesn't support the broader goals that we have for our community. What we're interested in is something that does this for us. So it's an opportunity to talk, to check back in with the community, to make sure that we heard things right. You all asked some excellent questions coming out of the retreat. We've done some more work on this to tighten things up and make this a stronger case. And hopefully now it gives us the confidence together to move into the next piece.
So the real decision point then will be at the end of this second phase when you come back with a number that says, to meet your minimum requirements is $100 million, and we go, I don't think so. But if you come back and say, to meet your minimum requirements is, pick another number, 20 million, then we might say, okay, let's go. I mean, it's kind of the checkpoint is at the end of this next phase.
And it's not that dissimilar, John, in my mind, from the conversation we were having at the beginning of the day, related to the intersection, the use of the building, and things like that, because we don't know siding, we don't know the model. Duncan, is it fair to say that most of these performing arts centers are not owned and managed or operated by the municipality, but they're actually a 501c3 that?
Well, it turns out that there are some buildings that have been very successfully operated by local government. But there are basically 5 different models, and our job in the business plan is to consider which of those 5 models makes the most sense.
Just, Michael, before you ask that question, it kind of gets back to Russ's question. One way to look at this, but we haven't gotten there yet, is you can completely limit the town's exposure. You may say, we'll provide the land, set up a 501c3, Arts Council, it's on you to do a capital campaign to build. We'll provide exactly the same level of financial support we're providing now.
Yep.
We'll consider maybe more or not.
Or more.
Yeah.
Okay, so I have a few questions. First, similar to what Russ said, you know, I'm in favor of it. I just am not convinced yet that we have something that works. So let me elaborate. So on your page 14, assuming at least that, I don't know if you can scroll back, it's the facility users and users page.
Yeah.
This one, exactly. So I had a little bit of a feel in the discussion during the retreat that maybe some of these numbers are a little overstated, maybe double counted, et cetera, and that's a very crucial point for me. So did I understand that correctly in our discussion back at the retreat, or?
You did, and there were some good comments raised, and this new chart reflects the fact that we went back, went through all the surveys again. I personally interviewed the 3 biggest users to try and verify these numbers with all of them. I separated out the demand for the 300 to 500 seat space as compared to 100 seats, as compared to a rehearsal room.
Okay.
Try and make that a little bit clearer. So it's stronger. Having said that, this is still sort of aspirational. So for example, I had a good talk with the head of Charleston Collegiate, the head of the school, very excited about coming and using a theater because now they perform in a cafetorium or, you know, a terrible space. And she talked about the 3 different programs they might bring. And we talked about rent, but it isn't real yet. So the exercise in the business plan is we bring all those groups back together in a room together. We introduce the concept of rent. We try and set what those rental rates are. We put a blank calendar down and say, all right, let's now book the first year of activity in that space, given these assumptions about rent and ticketing and food and beverage operations and security and backstage labor and all that. So,
But these are the adapted numbers.
These are adapted, still probably somewhat aspirational.
Well,
but
I can understand
more work
that, but
to
at
come.
least you went through this exercise again, verified those numbers, corrected them
Yes,
where necessary, so we're looking at a verified picture here,
correct.
so to speak. Okay, that's reassuring. If you go down to page 6, that's the market analysis, exactly this one. So help me again to understand, so is this residences, all homeowners? I mean, what are the, what
Yeah, this is
this reflecting?
Right, this is about a full-time, this chart is about full-time resident population.
Okay.
So it starts with that. There was other work that we did to try and estimate what is the seasonal population, and then there's another exercise, which is who are visitors, and how often, when do they come, and where do they come from, and what are they like?
Okay, but the last 2 you're not sharing with us here. This is
Well,
only
no,
for...
this is, they're in the full deck, the 90-slide version, it's in there. This is the summary deck.
Okay, and then the last question I have to page 12. I think those are certainly comparable locations, especially Highlands, I would think, and Martha's Vineyard and Vale, et cetera. But similar to either Russ or Brad, I don't remember, how many of these facilities that are listed here are actually operating at least at break even?
Well, they all operate at break even. There are none of these buildings that every year incur such a significant operating loss because they wouldn't still be in business. The way that these operating budgets work is that these facilities are sustained with a combination of earned income and contributed income. And in some communities, it's 80% earned, 20% contributed meaning grants, donations, and so on. In other communities, it's the opposite. It's 20% earned, 80% contributed. So there's no one right way, and the work in the business plan is to figure out first of all, what is the earned income potential around the building? What does that then suggest about the need for contributed income? And we're going to test that here. We're going to say, if, for example, the number is, it will take $400,000 a year to sustain these recommended facilities, is that an appropriate number for this community to consider? And we will
This is my
test
last question.
that to bring it back to you,
Yeah.
because the only bottom line that we're ever working towards is one that has a small surplus,
Right.
never a deficit.
So that takes me to the next level. So I understand the next phase, to get a little bit meat on the bone, so to speak, maybe have some first, sketches of what that all could look like or something. But at some point, we really need to cross over, I think it's the right thing to do for the town to plant the seed here, right? To get it going and yes, finance the study and get a better idea about the market and the participation, et cetera. So I'm all for that. But that's where it stops for me, right? So I can see us as a town to contribute, but we should not run this place. So at some point, probably even latest, I guess, even at the end of the second phase, right? We need to find a way to, rattle the cage of the community and said, okay, is there somebody who is willing to step up? Are there people in this community that are willing to step up, create an organization that will carry this venue? And carry this venue means, for me, to help us then designing it to its final stages, and but in particular, find the funding. Right. Because without funding from the community to build this place, and without ongoing funding of the community and maybe some other generous, people in the room or elsewhere, this will not fly. Sorry, Roger. This. Yeah, I know. Well, I looked at you, but anyway.
That's your trade for no fireworks, Roger.
This to me is a very decisive moment where the community needs to understand we plant the seed, but we are not the town should not be the one that harvests it. It will contribution, perfectly fine with me. But at the end, we need something like the Arts Council organization that brings that to life and helps us, and a lot of these other venues, I think, that you have exactly on this page. Look at Vail, the Villar Center. That's how they operate, right? To bring in the donations from residents and part-timers and tourists and whoever, to give us the ability to finance the building and orchestrate the operations, and making sure that at the end of the year we always come in with a zero.
But that's basically your business planning, is here's the alternatives available to build and operate this facility.
Yes, but I think that Councilman is raises
further.
an important point, that the work we're doing is to start to deliver a message out into the community that there is an expectation on the part of the town, in order to move this project forward, that this is not going to be something that the town can or should do on its own, that it will require a public-private partnership. So we will be speaking with the development community. We may well speak with funders, but we're not going to be asking for money, and we're not going to be asking for land or development deals. We're going to be sort of introducing the project in broad terms and trying to initiate a discussion that you will continue with our completed physical plan and business plan in order to raise the money necessary to build and sustain.
Well, the only caution that I would make is, I think the term community with a little bit of tongue in cheek, I don't think this could be funded, supported on the backs of people that live here. I think we would encourage them to attend the meeting or attend the venues. I think we would encourage them, maybe add this to their list of contributions to their churches and charitable organizations, things like that. But I think it's going to be of paramount importance to have, 15, 20, 25, 30 businesses that Buck Lumber or contractors or, people that not people, businesses that have made a good income, by virtue of their work here on Kiowa Island, to be able to say, $500,000. And I think we can use as a test case, MUSC. That's going to service the entire community. I honestly don't know how well they have done from the community, the broad-term community, in terms of adding them to donors. I mean, we gave, the town gave, and I don't know who the other major contributors to. So I think we have to look at that anyway in that type of context. I presume that there are around here. There's a lot of big businesses, but, we just have to see if they're willing to support something like this.
And as I said, I understand that the second phase will give us a lot of, meat on the bone to do this. But then we need to understand that we must expect the community to step up, right? And I fully agree with you, John, and the people that make money on this island.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah,
That's,
like I said,
that's equally, and that's the same, I believe, and I know it from the Villar, but I assume also in the other places. I mean, this is always a combination of individual donors and business donors, et cetera, that make these places viable. And that's what we need to come to understand if this, at the end of the day, can really fly.
Roger's your hand up.
Yeah, we've spent a fair amount of time talking here. Duncan, do you have 10 more minutes?
Yes, sir.
Why don't we open it up for citizens or community members that have been sitting here patiently? Roger?
I'd just like to know, from your experience nationwide, how many of these venues get owned and operated privately for a profit?
Branson, Missouri, a few Broadway buildings, a few scattered commercial ventures here and there, but basically less than 5%. Correct.
What they're all saying is basically the premise is you have to find a way to get enough financial support in advance that's committed to make sure you're going to be able to cover your costs going forward, both for the cost of construction and the cost for operation.
Correct. But how I frame it is you need to make sure that the building delivers so much value to the community that private citizens and government, foundations, corporations, and families are prepared to help sustain the building on the basis of the value it delivers.
Thank you.
Other questions?
The 800 number is only construction. It doesn't then include equipment?
So it's the 30% add-on gave us equipment too.
It goes up to now over $1,000.
That was included.
It's $800 a square foot, and then you add 30% for soft costs, including equipment. So we
That's
put
how you
that
get
in.
to the 24 million.
That was the 1.3% times.
Okay, yeah.
Other questions?
Okay, I see it now. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Again, I live in Highlands. Michael, you had asked a question. There are really two organizations in Highlands. I support the theater company in Highlands, and their figures they use is earned revenue contributes 40% of operating costs. Contributions contribute about 60% of operating costs. To give you an example of what Highlands is doing, the theater company is most schools don't have theater programs anymore. So what they're now doing is they've created a youth theater program where every school in the community has at least one, if not two, theater performances that they come to so they can actually experience what theater is as an audience member. And they're evolving to a point where they'll now actually be able to bring students in who actually then participate in the theater programs as well. So I think in addition to, things that, we can talk about in terms of getting to break even, there are also things that I think are intangible points that would be very helpful in this community.
One of the things, I don't know if you take this into account, most of the events that we have here, they're either free or for $10. And when you look at the 60-minute driving distance or time it's potential customers, probably I'd say most, if not 70 or 80% of those people are within 30 to 40 minutes of downtown Charleston. I go downtown Charleston 10 or 12 times a year, okay, for real high-quality stuff. You're paying $35, $40, $50 a ticket. So to bring that here, we're not going to be getting them for free or for $10. We've only got, I think we've got 2,200 registered voters. That's 1,100 full-time homes here, it's about the same at Seabrook. So the only way to make it work is you gotta drag a lot of people in this direction, which is one of the things that in general we're trying to stop, is attracting a lot of people in this direction.
To take this to the credit markets, you would need 25% equity.
Not, you can't finance this.
So how would you pay for it? So you would have to pay for it up front, rather than a bond issuance, or rather than,
There is bond financing of projects like this, but that's not what's underwriting.
Bond guaranteed by the town.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am.
I am the mysterious Madeline Kay.
Comedy or dance?
Dance.
Dance, okay.
I believe that in your data collection, I was polled because I'm the chair of the R World. And so that is the source of the numbers that you see next to my name on page 14. The only flaw in that is that we really don't have needs outside the existing space that we are already provided at Sandcastle. So that's just a piece of the data that probably should be eliminated from this.
I think we want to make the case that the quality of venue that we can provide for you might encourage you to participate.
Sandcastle is excellent.
One more question, please.
Sorry.
Yes, ma'am.
So I noticed that from the retreat presentation, you had total use days of 483. And that's dropped, obviously, because you've refined your data and you've gone back to people. But I have a concern that with more refinements, it drops even further. And then we have that white elephant we're all concerned about, where you have fewer days of use than you have of it sitting idle, where it still has to be heated and cooled and insured and everything else. So as the refinement of the data, the numbers are going down, I think that is a concern we need to watch for through phase 2.
Thank you. I'm sorry. So, Duncan, thank you very much.
John, we actually had two more questions here in the room.
Yes, sir.
Governance question. When this project was presented initially, I asked the question very specifically whether this study had two distinctive parts and whether there was a decision, I think I used that word, a decision at the end of part 1. Is the town council making a decision that the community demand for such a facility exists in order to go to phase 2?
When we originally approved the financial commitment to the project, it was in 2 phases. Yes. So there was not a distinct point that said, yes, continue. There probably was one that said, I don't think this is even worth going forward, and we would have stopped. But there's really not a go, no-go. It's because we've already contracted for the 2 phases.
My memory must be faulty, which is not surprising, but I thought I asked that question specifically if there was going to be a decision about the innate demand for the facility at the end of part 1 of this 2-part.
And my answer was no, there was not a definitive go, no-go for it to be effectively 2 projects. There is
So we haven't made that determination.
We haven't. We will make it after phase 2.
Yeah, and Paul, somewhat related to that, it was kind of, and we did have an extensive dialogue with Duncan and his team about kind of the needs assessment versus a feasibility analysis. And part of the stuff that was added, the last couple of slides, address the issue to try to just understand ballpark. If this was going to be, if what they were going to come back is to build a 300-seat theater with these other extra performance spaces is going to be a $100 million project, that was probably not going to pass the smell test.
Right.
And we would simply say, we'll stop kind of just the project here, no sense wasting anybody's more time. But if you come back with something that looks like, well, yes, even if you add in construction cost, it's maybe 20 to 25 million, but you could actually not build all that out at once because it's got some extra performance spaces. So maybe you're looking at 15 to 25 million. Is that in the realm of something that's worth pursuing and looking at and doing the further work and analysis that's going to take place in phase 2, with understanding that we've got a lot of range of options. We're not committing ourselves to anything. We're not committing the town to anything down the road. You know, there are ways to cabin up this so the town is simply hands this off at some point in time. You know, one option would be, as an example, not saying this is the only option, is we could say to the Arts Council, set up as a 501c3, we would make 3 acres of municipal center available, contingent upon you going out and raising the $20, $25 million it costs to build it and the necessary support beyond the $300,000 we currently provide in order to operate it. And if you can't do that, then...
Yeah, but continuing to phase 2 is not committing the town to anything.
That's right, nothing.
I think the other question is committees. I think at this particular moment in time, after what you've heard for this from Duncan and questions and whatever, does anybody feel that the project should stop? Otherwise, we just continue, right? Because that's what we're under. So does anybody feel?
I, for one, am not convinced. Look, I think the idea is a very interesting idea, but I'm not convinced that there is the community support, a broad-based community support to do this. I'm not saying at the end of the day it's a bad idea, but I'm not hearing that sort of groundswell of support like, yes, this is something that we need to find a way to do.
Fair enough. Okay, council, anything? Okay, Duncan, thank you very, very much. Staff has taken the time to prepare a slideshow. All I could ask is, could you hit the proverbial tops of the waves? You know, we've all had this. Hopefully everybody's had a chance to read it. We appreciate all the work that's been done. So could you please? 3:45 now. Aaron, you're up first. So your first presentation, I'll just ask you to make it brief. How about that?
Good afternoon.
Erin is our new communications manager, and we are so glad she is here.
So I'm pleased to talk to you a little bit about the communication initiatives that we have coming up for this year. A partnership with Kika and the town, creating a meeting so that there's communication. Our town manager, our town administrator is working on that. A few other items, reviewing our methods, currently looking at some of the analytics from our various platforms and how we're reaching property owners. Our new website, we have an anticipated soft launch in mid-April, and then the announcement to the public will be in May. And we also are working on a new strategic communication plan. We've worked with Lou Hammond Group, and they've created a draft, and we're going to review it and update it with any changes, and that will be finalized in June.
Not to put you on the spot.
Sure.
And your buddy's on the air. What's the probability of that website, do you think, in mid-April? That's like 2 weeks. Pretty high?
It's going to be a soft launch, so we're not going to actually have an announcement letting people know. So if we have any glitches or things like that, we're hoping that we can get it through and then in May have that announcement to the public.
Okay.
And I don't know if Stephanie wanted to mention anything because I see her face popped up.
No. Yep, Mayor, we're working diligently on it. So as she said, a soft launch this month, and then at the town council's May meeting is when we'll officially roll it out and announce it.
Okay.
But we're probably now about 75% completed, so we're rolling right along.
Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, Stephanie. Thank you. Interactive communication concept, who's speaking to that?
That would be me.
Oh, Michael?
Yeah. So next page, please. Yep, sorry.
I'm sorry, one of the staff members, Aaron or John, is going up there to roll it out.
Yeah,
So the
sorry.
last staff member, just remember to hit enter.
Okay, so in this context, just an additional information back to what we in the town council retreat discussed to increase our direct interaction between the town council and the community. So we had our first community drop-in meeting on Friday after the March town council meeting, and that was John Moffat and me. We were a little challenged, John, by the weather because it was raining, heavily that morning. So there's an argument there. And then certainly we were competing with the KICA board meeting about the governance. But still, at least 10 people showed up, and we have really very lively discussion over those 3 hours at the time. We will continue doing this every Friday after the town council meeting. So the same week, just on Friday, from 9 to 11. The next meeting will be this week, Friday, April 7th, and this time it will be Brad and myself. The only change here to the slide is we unfortunately cannot do it at the Sandcastle because we were informed this morning that there are some HVAC issues and water damage, so we have to relocate, but we will do it in the KICA building, in the boardroom, I think the board meeting that was offered to us as an alternative. So please join us on Friday, April 7th from 9 to 11 in the KICA building.
Dr. Heinfelder,
Yeah.
maybe we miscommunicated. We just pushed out that it's going to be at Town Hall in our executive conference room this Friday from 9 to 11.
Oh, I'm sorry. Okay. Then,
But we pushed that communication out. by
okay,
about
so back,
2 or
everything
3
is
weeks
right
ago.
except that it's neither the Sandcastle nor the KICA building. It's the town center here, the executive room behind us. Okay.
Correct.
Then we had a couple of new podcast formats that we issued. One kind of more in a talk show style setting with video. I hope you all enjoyed that. One was with the mayor and me talking about the topic we're also addressing later this afternoon about the Beach Walker Drive and Parkway intersection topic. And then I believe Brad had a very nice also talk show style session with Kevin Donlan, the new board member of KICA.
Michael, just one thing. Stephanie, I'm not aware that a notice has gone out regarding this.
I'm sorry, I saw
Oh,
it.
did? When did it-
Confirm with Aaron. Maybe she just sent it to me as a
What's that?
draft. I did look at it. I thought
Okay, I
actually
didn't
was
show
released.
up. It didn't show up in mine, that's why, okay.
Okay, but what is the location then again?
Yeah, she sent it out at 1:22 PM today.
It says Bobcat?
It says here,
No,
Bobcat
about-
Hall Conference Room within the
We're
KICA
talking
Hall.
about the community
All right.
drop-in that
So-
was going to be
Okay.
scheduled at KICA.
All right, so again, back to what I said earlier, it's not the Sandcastle, it's not the executive meeting room here in the town center, but it is the KICA building, the conference room in the KICA building. Yes.
Sorry,
Thank you.
I had said here, so I didn't realize that somehow it got preempted to move
Yeah.
to KICA
Okay.
building.
All right, so this week, Friday, 9 to 11, Brad and me in the KICA building. Okay, nobody seems to be opposed to that. We are still
Right.
working on some other formats. I think what might come up next would be regular community outreach office hours for us, so that always there's a day, maybe Tuesdays morning before this meeting here, to just come and see us. Thank you. John?
There's always a sense of familiar faces that attend these meetings. If you have any ideas about another venue, another approach, another way to do these things, please let us know. Thanks for Michael and Brad and Russ for bringing these new ideas here or to us, and we're doing them. But, if you think of something else, another approach to take, please let us know. John?
Yeah, just from planning, the first item I'll give an update on is our tree preservation landscape. That has commenced already. We've had 2 workshops, work group meetings rather. This is a subgroup of our planning commission. And so the next stage of that work group is to begin to bring in various experts to kind of better understand nuances related to developing the ordinance. And so our target will be to bring back some language back to the full commission in July. The second update, just regarding the development agreement, this is with the master developer, 2013 amended and restated development agreement. As you all know, that agreement will be sunsetting at the end of this year. And so there are a number of steps needed to be had regarding planning, zoning matters that we want to be able to ensure that those are either codified in somewhere in our zoning code or some other, or memorialized in some other manner. So that's an ongoing process that has been done. Staff has prepared what I'm calling a worksheet that has identified just items that not only the town, community association, the developer have outlined within the development agreement. And our next step is to continue that coordination. Have a meeting scheduled next week with staff and 2 council representatives who will be helping us just sort of guide and direct all of those different amendments that are part of that process. And so we'll have updates hopefully in the next couple of weeks officially on that matter. The other 2, if you all recall, this is actually one of the components technically kind of connected to our comprehensive plan update, but after our comprehensive plan update or in sync, we want to look at our zoning code and look at sort of a rewrite and updating any outdated standards. Draft RP is being prepared now. Hopefully I'll be able to get that out to the end of this week. It's ready. Just a few more minor things to add into, but we'll have a consultant help us with that particular process. And so that's be released this month. Hopefully be able to identify a qualified professional to assist us within the next 2 months by looking at that timeline. And the final update regarding Betsy Harrison Parkway Overlay Zoning District. Just a brief overview. This is connected to one of what I identified from our planning strategies, one of growth management strategies for Kiowa's existence. We've relied heavily on the development agreement as one of the primary growth management strategies for the town. And with the sunsetting of one of those development agreements this year, it's important for us to continue to look at other ways that we manage not only growth on the island, but beyond the island. And so one of those initiatives in contentions with the urban growth boundaries to look at what happens on Betsy Harrison Parkway in the town, be more in tune of the development pressures that are occurring at our front door. And so staff has begun to put out some communications. You may have seen some things that go out around urban growth boundary. Tomorrow, our planning commission will be discussing or hearing from staff the impacts of the urban growth boundary. And recently, we're trying to schedule a meeting with our county council members to introduce this so that we can begin to engage with the county on matters pertaining to this overlay district opportunity. Yep.
If you could work with Aaron, I think in written format would be adequate. I don't know that everybody has a real good understanding of this whole notion of growth boundaries, urban, rural, on Johns Island, where it begins, where it ends. If you could, maybe definitions, maybe some maps or whatever. It's real important. And I know we've talked about it, but it always seemed to, as I recall, we've talked about it in the context of roads and how the roads would, I think that would be helpful, John. So when you guys get a chance, if you could do something like that.
I actually have a meeting scheduled this week, so Aaron and I already will be pushing out some more things.
Hey, John, that was my idea. Public Safety Department, is that all set? You're all set, John?
All set.
Public Safety, Craig?
Good afternoon. Couple of changes. First, emergency calling box. We're going to finalize a couple of meetings with some of the prospective companies, trying to narrow it down to the top 3 calling box. And at that time, we'll develop a goal timeline when coming up with a plan to go into the implementation stage. The next thing is the RFP for public safety consulting firm. Public Safety Committee would, in the process of drafting that RFP. Also, with an addition to that, selecting a outside agency such as either state or a federal agency to conduct threat assessment across the island. And the goal is to have these things provided as a draft by, hopefully by June 2023. That's it.
As I announced last month, we've received notification from the sheriff that the day shift coverage was going to be terminated by the sheriff. They are taking a different approach to how they wish to provide coverage for the Sea Islanders going back to Wadmalaw and Eamville.
Yeah, Eamville.
We are pursuing alternate agencies, and I'm hoping we can have that finalized, you know, if not by the May meeting, because we won't see everybody again until May, and it's effective June 1. So there's only one more
Correct.
public session to do that, but we are working with them, and I'm optimistic. I think we'll be able to work it out.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Ruta?
I am next. So I have two priorities, and just very quickly, the evaluation of our reserves. And I've been gathering and compiling some information to present at Ways and Means on different worst-case scenarios, how including hurricane cleanup, business interruption, and we'll look at this at Ways and Means for you to look at the what's the comfortable level of reserves that the town wants to have. And another priority is the review of our investment policies, and the RFP is in progress. I want to schedule it out so it comes back after the budget adoption, so I'll have time to review the results and present it to you. That would be it.
Very good. April 24th.
Any questions?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, very quick update to our Kiowa Grows Green Initiative. We received a lot of input for the work plan. We incorporated that. We also had, or I had, some first preliminary meetings with some of the stakeholders, and they're very supportive as well. We actually added also Riverstone into that list of stakeholders. I expect the first meeting to be in the second half of April, and we will focus as a group on these 4 topics: EV charging station concept, battery-operated landscape equipment, limiting further the use of single-use plastic materials, and also look very seriously at converting all vehicles operating on our beach to electric vehicles. Right? Brian, I'm sorry.
Very good. Anything else, Michael? Oh, Brian?
Okay, so just a couple updates from last month's town council meeting. We're still focusing on the same ideas, increasing the number of EV vehicles in the town's fleet. We've got a couple of them that are subject to be cycled out in this next fiscal year, and we're planning on bringing hopefully at least one EV into that fleet on that cycle out of those that we're getting rid of. The hazardous material pickup. It's something that I just started some conversations with Carolina Waste. Carolina Waste isn't going to be doing it themselves, but they're helping me find some companies that will do that. So per the county, they've stopped taking the hazardous waste collection from Carolina Waste, but there's other companies in the area, so they're helping the town, myself, look into some options for that. So we also are continuing to come up with a business plan for some solar panels. We might have come across a really great opportunity with Riverstone team that might be interested in working with us and utilizing some solar panels on some new developments. Of course, there's a lot that needs to be ironed out, but it's very encouraging knowing that they're willing to work with us on that, given that they've got some new development that's going to go on. And it would be a great opportunity to showcase some new implementation for solar panels. And then, as always, again, we certainly encourage community members that have interest in these topics or experience in these topics to come to us and show your support and help us move forward. Anything else?
This notion of this hazardous waste, is anybody really worried about that? Are you getting pressure from the county? It just seems dangerous to me when I hear that.
Right. Well, so
happening.
hazardous materials, it's kind of, we can kind of narrow it down to the biggest items we see in our wet paint cans that are getting disposed of improperly, lawn care applications that are getting disposed of improperly. So just being able to put those in a certain area that'll be segregated.
No. I understand the concern about a resident that lives here and all that kind of stuff, but I mean, where it ends up. I mean, so where's all this paint end up? If it's not, if it doesn't end up where it's supposed to go or with people that know what to do with it, isn't that, it just seems like it's dangerous, you know?
Well, first, I think you have to look at where it ends up today, right? And today, paint cans and stuff like that end up a lot in our household trash cans, trash bins. So it actually ends up in a regular landfill.
That's my point.
Right?
That's my
so
point.
If you start collecting these items, and we are not talking about, super dangerous stuff. We are talking about batteries and paint and fertilizers and stuff like that that just don't belong into the regular household trash. And then they get taken care of in special, places to put them with special protection, et cetera.
That's
so
right, and certainly
they're not
we'll-
reused, or they're not recycled, but they are treated in a way that they will not harm the environment as it could happen in a regular landfill.
Right, we'll certainly ask
If you
these
show up at the
processes.
Bees Ferry dump with a trunk load of paint, they have a specific area that you go take that paint.
Correct.
Oh,
And so
okay.
it doesn't go in the regular dump. So they do segregate hazardous waste
Okay.
there if you show up, is really your question.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're very particular, right? I mean, electronic components go in one. If you have any kind of printed circuit boards or
they're
products
pretty
that are containing the stuff,
Okay.
they are very particular in separating these things. And that's also what we are thinking about here, to have like a quarterly or monthly kind of day where community members can come and help us dispose these things properly.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Jim?
Hi, as requested, I'll be brief. So most of these things, you saw all of this last month. So with the first one with communication activity, that's ongoing. I've actually got a meeting with Aaron tomorrow as well to talk about our plan going forward. A couple of things on community, educating the community. A lot of that is going to be incorporated into the new website. Actually have a meeting tomorrow to figure out how to edit and add pages on the website. So once I have that, we'll get moving with that. The next thing is looking at pesticides and fertilizers. We have discussions underway with the Conservancy. There'll be more on that to come. And then the last one, which I'm going to spend just a tiny bit of time on, one in particular, but one of the two efforts that I'm supposed to kind of assist with that other departments are working on. Just kind of two quick things I wanted to touch on there. With permeable surfaces, I actually found out at a recent Conservancy meeting that the entire Ocean Woods community, all the driveways within that community switched to permeable pavers because they got a great deal. And it really came down to one property owner had the idea, worked with a company. The company gave them a great bulk rate to basically do the entire neighborhood. And so a huge impact with adding permeable surfaces to an area. So just an idea to think about, going forward, other ways to get community members and neighborhoods on board with that. So the last thing I want to talk about real quick is the Kiowa Bridge. We've had some discussions about that. I'm going to go ahead and skip to my next slide. So this is the paved pull-off before the bridge where, we've used Greenbelt funds to create a public access. We've had discussions about the marsh not doing well there, issues with the public access in that area. And so we're kind of in the preliminary phase of working with the Conservancy on their projects for the upcoming year, and one of them might be a restoration project here. So this is just kind of a conceptual idea of what that project could look like. And really, I bring it up because I think it's a topic that we need to have some more discussion on, is what the town envisions for that site going forward. Because, you know, if we were to engage in a restoration project there, but we're still allowing the public, encouraging the public to park there and walk to the water, then that restoration project probably isn't going to do as well. So I just threw 3 ideas, and today is probably not the day to talk about them. You know, of kind of, you know, where do we see that site? You know, what do we see the use of that site going forward? So one could be you eliminate public access completely. You restore the area. You add an overlook and some interpretive signage maybe. Another option would be that you improve public access. You keep it as public access, but maybe you build a dock or a boardwalk over the marsh so that it's protected. And then the other extreme is that you basically take away the public access entirely and leave that pull-off as it was originally intended 30 or 40 years ago, which was an emergency pull-off, or if the bridge is blocked, or just somewhere to get out of the roadway. So just a few things to think about.
Good.
Questions?
Thanks, Jim.
All right, thank y'all.
Okay, good.
Ordinance and regulation?
Did somebody push?
If I could just ask Stephanie, is Stephanie on with us still? It wasn't a.
Yes, I'm here.
It wasn't really a status report from the retreat action items, but just a question about 2 things that we have discussed at the last couple of council meetings. The beach, weddings on the beaches and fireworks, because I think staff was drafting
those are coming to you all. We're bringing it as a package to the May meeting. It was going to be, the fireworks is going to be on the agenda for this month, but Joe got the information a little late, so he couldn't get the ordinance together. And so it made sense really to bring both the fireworks and the wedding on the beach. They're both coming to you in May. And we've also been in conversation with the Surebird group that we help manage, and they had some additional input. So you all will receive that along with some additional information in May.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Ordinance and regulation review? Michael, or who's going to?
No? Could somebody push the button, please? Yeah, 2 more, 3 more actually. Sorry.
John, can you go up there and move the slide? Or Brian? Thank you.
Brian's doing it. You have to stay there, Brian. Yeah, 2 more. So real quick, we finalized the work plan now for the ordinance and regulation review project. A lot of input that we received here from my colleagues, but also otherwise. Work plan and team are now finalized. We will start in the next 2 weeks with the first meeting. Plan is to first address a couple of quick fixes that we found over the last couple of weeks and months that might need attention, but also those that have been highlighted by community members, and then go step by step through the catalog of ordinances. This will probably take, as I mentioned last time, most of 23, if not even spilling over in 24. And also here, similar to what Brian said with the work group for the Kiowa Goes Green initiative, also here, of course, we would hope for a lot of vital interest from the community to join this work group and help us with this effort. Next topic.
Next topic.
Volunteer appointment and support policy. We are in the final stages of drafting the content that I listed here, and then we can hand it over to the staff for a first draft of this policy. And then last but not least, Brian, the heritage concept, the last topic from the retreat, where we are not making a lot of progress right now, although this is an interesting and important topic, but with all the other things on our plate, this is a little bit delayed, but I hope that we can bring this to more detail for the May or latest June town council meeting. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you all for your work in preparing all this information. Item B, to consider approval. Good. This is the second and final reading, an ordinance to amend Chapter 12, Land Use Planning and Zoning, Article 2. Is that you, John, or?
Oh, we need a motion to approve?
Okay. Motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? Again, this is the second reading. None? All in favor?
Aye.
New business, approval of ordinance 2023, an ordinance authorizing and directing the town of Kimball to enter an intergovernmental agreement relating to South Carolina local revenue services. There you go. Okay.
Yeah. So this is just an ordinance that will update some language in the agreement we already have with the municipal association. So there was this new business license law called Act 179 that created like this unit within municipal association that collects business licenses. So now our current agreement is with municipal association, so we need to change it to South Carolina Local Revenue Services. We currently participate in all three programs that they offer, which is instead of us licensing insurance companies, insurance brokers, and telecommunication companies, they go to the state. And then the state remits the money to us. And they do it for all the municipalities in the state. And just for your reference, last year we collected $526,000 from those three programs. And we've been with so this agreement has been in existence, just cleaning up the language with this for the new program names and the new organization that collects the money now.
But it's not changing anything in the program? It's just
No, the same conditions. We're gonna get the money. We get the money. It's not even quarterly. Well, you can say quarterly. One is once a year, and the municipal association is collecting 4%, and they've been collecting the same fee. So there is no changes to the agreement except for cleanup language to be consistent with the new names, renaming those organizations. So we're asking for adoption of this ordinance. And the ordinance pretty much is standard to every municipality. It came as a model ordinance from municipal association.
Could I have a motion to approve, please?
So moved.
Second.
Any
Thank you.
discussion? Okay.
Question? No, thank you.
Thank you, Deruta.
Vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Last month, we had a special presentation from the chair, director, what his position was, the head of the election committee. And he presented a number of very interesting statistics relative to results of elections on even years and odd years, or when the municipality has it on a year linked to state and federal, the participation was lower, so everybody, okay. Well, we left it that the governor, as we understand it, the legislature is supposed to be making a change to take away the option that municipalities have relative to having their election on even years, which is what ours is, even years, and move them to odd years. After that presentation, I asked Joe, Stephanie and Joe, to prepare an ordinance so that we maintain, so that we collectively, are in control of that and not wait until the legislature, the governor makes a decision that could impact us one way or another. So what you see before you is an ordinance that I asked Joe to prepare, ordinance 2023-24, that would amend our elections from even to odd, and the effective date would be 2025. So, for all of the decision-making that all of us had made relative to commitment to volunteer and become a member of town council, it would be effectively extending our terms by a year. So my term, Brad's term, John's term, who would be expiring in 2024, would be 2025, and then Russ's and Russell's and Michael's, it would be 2026, would be 2027. So that is what's before you, and we can discuss it.
So you need, I move that we approve this ordinance.
Okay,
Second?
Second.
discussion?
So let me just point out a couple of things. One of the things that we were told at the meeting with the guy from the Municipal Association was that if we do nothing and this law passes and the governor signs it, that one of the conditions in that law is that you cannot extend terms, you can only draw them closer in. So if this law gets signed in May or June, which is what the anticipation is, then we would have to have an election in 23.
In November 23.
And, which is literally around the corner, and the feeling was, with as many things as we kind of signed up for in the retreat that we want to try and get accomplished, that we're way better served extending a year to try and get all of those things done than to campaign for the last several months rather than do anything.
And in addition, our terms would automatically be shortened,
Correct.
rather than, we would not have the option.
not have the
We
option.
would
Yes.
lose the option, and for Brad, who was just elected last year, his term would end this year.
After 1 year, correct. If he's not reelected.
And so,
Correct,
so,
correct.
so this ordinance basically says, let's be able to control a little bit of our own destiny and extend the terms a year and have the election in 25.
I mean, I can understand that this could be controversial, and maybe also a disappointment for those that would love to put up their names for the next election this year. But I think, exactly as you said, John, I think we have now committed ourselves to so many topics that we are juggling, and I think the community get only a glimpse of the time we are spending on them as volunteers here, that I think we really want to bring this to a fruitful, completion. Being new in this, I also observed that it is always a challenge for the staff to deal with new council members, right? There's new ways of doing things and more demands and doing things differently. So I think it would be a huge burden also on the staff to have only a year of us and then potentially new people that they have to work with again. And then I think we really don't want to disrupt what we are trying to do here, because then in September, October, November, there would be nothing else than campaigning and not really hard work. And I think we want to, and we are committed to this hard work. So I would also like to approve this ordinance.
Any other discussion?
Yes, Mr. Mayor. I am fully supportive of moving to odd-year elections for the reasons outlined by the Charleston County representative at the last meeting. Notwithstanding, which I think are very valid comments made by my fellow council members, I feel very uncomfortable about usurping the role of the electorate in our deciding to extend our terms. Notwithstanding the fact that I understand that the Attorney General has opined that we have the authority to do that, what we had understood from the representative of Charleston County and what would happen if the state mandated that we move to elections is that it would extend terms, but then it's a mandate imposed by the legislature. I would be personally more comfortable allowing the voters to make the choice as to whether they want to have us extend our terms beyond what they had already voted on, And with regard to me, I'd be up in the fall and have less than 1 year term. But on the other hand, if the voters thought I was doing a poor job, that's an opportunity to replace me. If I decided to run again and they thought I was doing a good job, then I would have the opportunity to be reelected. For that reason, I would move to amend the last paragraph and shorten, and go ahead and move to odd years, but shorten the term rather than lengthen it by 1 year.
I think I understand what you're saying and where you're coming from entirely. But I think what convinced me to be okay with the extension is that ever since this topic was brought up, there was no concern voiced from the community. I had not one single email. I had not one single question in the drop-in meetings, in my meeting last week, and I haven't heard anything on that stand, neither last time nor this at the beginning of this meeting. So I would allow myself to take that as a quiet vote or silent vote, that the majority of the community would be okay.
So at this time, we have a motion to amend this ordinance. Is there a second?
I don't think he made a motion.
He did, no, you did, didn't you?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did.
He did.
So,
Joe, help me out here. We have a motion to approve
amend.
we have a motion to approve, motion and a second to approve the ordinance, and we have a motion to amend the ordinance. Help me out here.
The motion to amend would need to be seconded.
Is there a motion? Is Brad's motion, is there a second to Brad's motion?
Not, it
the
fails for
motion
lack of a
fails.
second.
So the motion fails.
Fails for lack of second.
So-
So then the motion on the floor is to adopt the ordinance as in discussion we've had. Any other discussion?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would ask. Anybody in the room that would like
No, they don't.
to contribute?
No.
No?
No,
Yeah, Ken?
no. Thank you, but no.
Okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay,
Mayor, I abstain.
okay. Just for the record, which all of you know, and I thought Brad's point is a very, very valid point, not the prior council, but the prior council before that, Weaver, Chris, I'm not sure who all was on that, extended terms from 2 to 4.
Thank you.
And, I mean, that's one of the responsibilities that we bear, so anyway, okay. There are 3 items, beach service franchise agreement, landscaping proposal, and air med contract, all of which we had some discussion at the Ways and Means. John, you want to go through these real quickly, or just make,
Sure. So the first one is the recommendation from the Ways and Means to adopt the franchise fee from Barrier Island Beach Service. They're the chair and umbrella provider, which is for $330,000 or 30% of sales, whichever is greater. And I understand that it's been several years since they only paid $330. It's been up around $380 at least the last year. So that's what they pay us for the right to provide chairs and rental umbrellas. So maybe a motion to approve this franchise agreement?
Yeah,
So moved.
Second.
any other discussion? All in favor?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, the only issue, and I don't know if we can amend it at all, but we raised this during the Ways and Means Committee meeting, and I'm disappointed that the change that was promised was not made. I refer to the actually agreement page, which says the proposed franchise fee. It's $330,000 or 30%, whichever is greater. It was our understanding at the Ways and Means Committee that was going to be revised to be $330,000 or 30% of gross receipts, whichever is greater, and that change was not made to the agreement.
That is correct. So
Yeah, it's on the cover sheet. That's why I probably didn't see it. You're right.
And the contract will reflect that for your signature, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thanks, Brian.
So this page, which was not changed, will be changed?
For the mayor's signature.
We can add that. We already do gross receipts, but we can definitely add that in there. I'll let Dorota know. So in your motion, just add that language so we don't forget. But it's already, we're already doing what you're asking us to do. So we can just make sure that it's, the language is put in there. So
And I
I'm
understand
sorry.
that's the intent.
We'll make sure that it's added.
Yeah, thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, second one is the landscape.
So the second one is a proposal for landscaping, and it's actually, it's not technically for landscaping, it's really for the planning of landscaping. And there's three components to this one, and then there's a little fourth kind of a sub-component. So the first three are to provide us a spatial presentation, kind of a, not really construction drawings, but a conceptual drawing of the Key Island Parkway Comprehensive Landscape Plan, and it's for the part of the parkway that we didn't include in the original, sort of from the traffic circle to the fresh fields, to work on that, to clean that up a little bit. And then the second one is for an area back here behind the town building for a rain garden and a grow native trail. And then the third, and probably the most important of the three, is the conceptual design for the Beachwalker Drive landscape enhancement. And I would say that for the first two, what they're going to do is they're going to provide us a conceptual plan. And then our landscape company is going to actually then install based on that conceptual plan, along with the people that are doing this plan. On the Beachwalker Drive landscape enhancement, the agreement we had, at least in the Ways and Means Committee, was that one of the first steps, if we approve this, will be for the landscape architect to actually walk that Beachwalker Drive with representatives from the communities along Beachwalker, so that everybody can be satisfied that what we're going to do along those areas that are really not very attractive is acceptable, whether it's simply putting pine straw down in certain areas or planting a bunch of bushes or something that screens, but there'll be a kind of a test walk, if you will, on what that's going to look like. But then, because that one is so significant, they're also going to, the architect is going to provide construction oversight as that planting is done. So whatever this walk generates in terms of the plantings, he'll ensure that it's actually executed that way. And so the total fee for this is $29,500 to do those three projects.
And Mayor Pro Tem and Mayor and members of council, if you wanted some additional detail, I had Brian and our OSD put together a very quick PowerPoint that they presented to the original council that may help explain kind of the process. If you all like that, they're ready to present that. If you're ready to vote, then they can forgo that presentation.
I think we can probably forego it, Brad.
Yeah, and I was, I had socialized it with some of the members in the Beachwalker community and kind of the streamlined process, given the lack of attention that's been paid heretofore with regard to Beachwalker, I think is appreciated. And I would just note one other thing, that we were going to essentially carve out and we'll identify the areas from on the east side of Beachwalker Drive, on the island side, basically from the general store to the entrance to the Key Island community, as well as kind of from where the utility stuff is to the Beachwalker Park on that side will essentially be carved out from this plan.
However, it may still have pine straw or some other ground cover put there, just probably no plantings.
That's right.
All right?
Are we still in the commentary phase?
Yeah.
Or?
Yeah.
Okay, so.
But we actually don't have a motion to approve.
Oh, that's why I was asking, so.
Yeah, can I have a motion to approve?
So moved?
Second.
Okay. Discussion?
So I wanted to update you that I have received quite a bit of communication from community members about this particular topic. In particular, their interest that we are doing it right this time. And so I would, or look at more options, let's say it this way. And I have the feel that similar to including the neighboring communities in the Beachwalker Drive topic, that we should also consider or ask the OSD to please hold a community meeting at a given point of phases 1, 2, and 3, so that community members can provide input, how they would like to see the planting develop along Beachwalker Drive and along Kiowa Island Parkway.
So we could probably have them do that?
Can I just interject quickly? In regards to that, so the plan that they were going, presentation they're going to show has that. If we want them to do a community meeting, we're not paying for that cost, council members. So they may do it at no cost, or they may add a small additional cost to add community meetings. But we have that cost added originally from the original plan. And they were going to kind of walk through that a little bit today, but we're more than happy to do that. But I'm just letting you guys know that it may be a small cost because we did not add that.
You know, it probably would be worth a small cost to make sure that we're going into the project with people satisfied with what the result's going to be.
And I'm not at all opposed.
And I'm sure they're willing to do that. This cost is probably very small. It probably is not going to be significant. And we also added the causeway into this proposal because I did talk with SCDOT, and so we just need to show them a plan, and they're willing to consider that.
And if they're willing to do that, I'm certainly not opposed. One other option would simply to be when we schedule the walkthrough, that we provide a notice and provide an opportunity for anybody
That would have been my second point,
interested
exactly, yes.
To join that.
For the Beachwalker, I would not recommend that for the Parkway, because that's probably a little dangerous. But I would really like to invite the community to participate here. In both of these aspects of the project, or all three actually, even if you know, somebody is really interested in the rain garden and the native trail here around the town building, to really participate. So I would hope that some of the community members will raise their hand. And as it relates to this Beachwalker, that's my second comment also, Beachwalker, Drive, please also make sure that somebody from the Kiowa Partners is involved in that, because they own a substantial stretch of that east side, and I think they should be involved in that walk along as well.
Yeah, of course, we're really not going to do much on their property, but that's okay.
We're not
There's still
doing,
ought to be a
it's
piece of
all within our property.
Nonetheless, they're a property owner along Beachwalker
I got
Drive.
you.
So. That's absolutely right.
Well, we have to, yes, and we'll have to submit whatever we decide. Yes, we'll do that.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Last one, John?
So the last one is the AirMed network. We have a contract now with the service to provide medevac services, helicopter medevac services to all of the residents of Kiowa. And a resident is really just somebody that owns a home, not necessarily somebody that has it as their primary residence. It's $8,163, and basically it provides free helicopter medevac services that otherwise would cost, I don't know how much, but a lot. We used it twice last year, and we figured that the cost of those 2 trips was probably 3 times what our premium is for this. So this is a service that the town provides to its residents or property owners, and we just want to renew this contract, same price as it has been. And as long as the program that we're on no longer exists.
You have a representative of the company here.
Yeah.
It's the local.
I was going to get your money.
My name is Wes McAdam. Good afternoon, everybody. I represent Global Medical Response and the Air Medcare Network. Locally, you know us here as Medicare Air and possibly CareFlight. Medicare Air, we're the helicopter ambulance in Charleston. We're the preferred provider for MUSC Children's Hospital. CareFlight is our Colleton County base at Colleton County Medical Center. Those are 2 of 9 aircraft we have servicing the state, multiple supporting from neighboring states, collectively north of 320 rotor and fixed wing air ambulance-based locations across the United States. So the Air Medcare Network is two things. It's the alliance of our aircraft, our service provision across the state, but it's also a member-based solution that we offer that eliminates the financial burden for individuals and households if, God forbid, you have to go for a ride with us for emergency medical transport originating at home, from the road, from one hospital facility to another. Pretty healthy bill that can come along with that ride, and even with good insurance, you can find yourself with significant out-of-pocket expense, and this serves to eliminate that. What the town has done, and this goes back to 2017, I believe, is they procured a measured version of the program that protects the residents here. It's measured in that, number one, you have to be you have to have insurance, you have to have health insurance, and you have to be a resident of the town of Kiowa, a resident defined as a full-time resident, property owner, or long-term renter. So if you fit those qualifications, and God forbid you have to go for that ride, and if that ride originates within Charleston County, you're not going to have any out-of-pocket expense for that transport. You have the option as a resident to upgrade to what we call full membership, which does two things. It eliminates the insurance restrictions, so it wouldn't matter whether you had health insurance or you didn't. Probably not too many uninsured residents here in the community, but you never know. And then it also eliminates the pickup restrictions, so as opposed to being limited to just Charleston County, it opens you up to every base that we have across the United States. So just a quick snapshot of the program for you there. My role with the company, I serve as a liaison to municipal leadership like yourselves. We have about 130, 135 of these programs across the country. So when they come up for renewal, as they are right now, I'm here to address any questions or concerns that you all have, the community has. So again, I'm available to you all.
Thank you for spending the time.
Wes, if you can point out that our contract actually is, a municipal contract actually terminated. I think you guys stopped that a couple of years ago, but because we're renewing, you're allowing us to keep that going.
I thought it was still active to the best of my knowledge.
It is still active, but
No,
the program is
it's
not, if we were
still
to
active.
drop out and renew again, we would come in at a different rate structure.
Correct.
Correct.
Right.
That's
but
what
right
I'm
now,
referring
so
to.
because you're continuing it,
It's the same.
same price, correct. Yes, I'm sorry, I wasn't, sorry about that. Yeah.
What would
So-
it have been if we discontinue?
I would have to get that number requoted, so I really don't know the answer to that. They would have to go through and reprice it again. I can
A
do that.
good chance that it's bigger than
Oh, yeah, it would be
$8,163.
considerably more than $8,000. I can almost assure you of that. We had a rate increase on our standard non-business rates this year, so this program is available direct to consumer. So if you and I met at the grocery store and you're like, Wes, I would really like one of these for my household, it's $99 a year right now. It went up from $85 to $99 a year. That had a trickle-down effect on our business plans because we offer this as a workforce benefit for municipalities or manufacturing or hospitals or whatever the case might be. It had about a $10 a year increase on our business plans. So what you'll notice is for those residents who choose to upgrade, right now they can do it for $35 or $45. $35 if they're over 60, $45 if they're under 60. That's going to go up to $45, $55, again, depending upon their age. But that's only for residents that choose to upgrade on that 1 year. You do have access to 3-year membership, 5-year membership, 10-year membership, and it is discounted as well because most of you all are Berkeley Electric Cooperative recipients, and we have a national affinity plan in place with Touchstone Energy. So based upon that, you'll get it at a discounted rate on those 3, 5, and 10-year options if you choose to do that, just not as deeply discounted as the 1 year because it's a 1-year program that we enter into with y'all.
Good. Thank you very much, Wes. Thank you for spending the afternoon with us and
My
taking the
pleasure.
time. Okay, executive session. So this is,
Need to vote on
Oh,
this.
we need to vote.
You need to vote.
Could I have a motion to approve the Air Medcare contract renewal?
So moved?
So moved. Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Very much so.
Could I have a motion to go into executive session?
Mayor, you just need to read the purpose of the executive session about. on the
Well,
agenda.
let's answer Dave's question, because what you're really saying is, am I going to need to sit here, or can I make a comment and leave? I could, you're right.
It won't be 3 hours. That I can guarantee you. There-
Right. I'd be inclined to take citizen comments now. The question is then when we come out of executive session, do we have to have another citizen comment section, or would this be sufficient?
That's
you'd
probably
be
nobody
gone.
left, because there's probably
Won't be any
nobody.
citizens.
You could amend the agenda
So,
to
to-
vote of 2/3 of council members.
Could I have a motion to amend the agenda to have citizen comments now?
So
So
moved.
moved. Second.
Second.
Go nuts.
Okay. Citizen comment?
Citizen comments.
Mr. Mayor, may I pose a question that may, I don't know if inform the citizen comments or not, but it's not now clear to me for what, I'm not opposed to going in executive session, I think it's appropriate to do so. It's not clear to me as to what the purpose of this executive session is, whether it is to authorize the mayor to negotiate the purchase price or to enter into a letter of intent that we would submit to the
I think we just,
No, I'm
I
saying,
think we
Brad,
just, I think we just amended the agenda to allow for citizen comments. So let's deal with
That's
that, and then we'll
correct.
deal with the other subject. Okay, Brad? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Council. My name's Tim Hazel. I am a resident of Kiowa at 283 Governor's Drive. I would like to quickly, to your point, Mr. Belt, add that there have been mistakes made. The town, its planning department, and the approach that they have taken to enforcing the ARDA has not been consistent with the terms of the law or the contract itself. And I would hope that you would listen to the concerns, albeit of nasty lawyers who just happen to have residence on the island.
I didn't call you
But-
nasty. I said you were blessed. I said
Yeah.
we were fortunate to have you.
But, right. But I would hope that you would take our comments and look at them in a productive way, not in a destructive or nasty way, because I think that we're all hoping to get to the same point, and that is to get a citizenry that is comfortable with the way things are done, and currently you don't have that. And I would say that the problem with that is going to be the next developer who comes down the pipe, whether it's over here at Andel or elsewhere. We are going to be very concerned, and maybe not fairly, to that next developer. So I would encourage you not to stiff-arm comment, especially with respect to concerns that we have, and in particular, 134 Blue Heron Pond. Things weren't done properly. Things can be fixed, but there doesn't seem to be desire to fix them. I thank you for your time.
Brad McIlvain, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road, to follow up on both of those comments from Councilman Belt and also Tim Hazel. I think it's been a problem with a lot of Kiowa institutions. And having served as a KICA board member for 3 years, I can say KICA had the same problem. There's such an effort to convince people that the original, whatever was done was right. And if you spent the time about trying to argue why it was right, as opposed to just fixing the problem, you could actually fix the problem and get more credibility. And I know KICA had the problem. I see it with the town as well. And I would encourage you, what I've always said is if you have two pathways, if you have a pathway that is clearly legal and you have a pathway that is questionably legal, don't go questionably legal, go clearly legal. As a public body, do what is clearly legal. We shouldn't be arguing about what may be legal. We should be arguing about what is clearly legal. And that's what I think a town, I suggested that KICA do it as well, and hopefully they will do it. But I think that's something that's important for public bodies to embody. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Dave DiStefano, 31 Burroughs Hall. I have 3 items I want to touch on. One, I've seen on the agenda from the Public Works thing about charging stations on the island. KICA's addressed that. There's no place for them. If you own a home, you've got your own charging station. If the regimes need them, they have to do it on their own. There's just no place to put them. We've already addressed it. The resort may want to do something, that's entirely up to them. So there's really no place to put them. There's no parking place to put them, et cetera. So I think that should be left up to Kika. With respect to the issue of whether increasing the term for a year or backing it off a year, Mike, you said you hadn't got any comments on it. I was at the last meeting when they talked about it. The first I learned that there was actually going to be a vote on it was when I walked in here today. So I think if we had publicly known there was going to be a vote on this or discussion on this sooner, you might have had some comments on that. Because most of the people I talked to said, just reduce it, keep everybody happy. With respect to the sheriffs, I don't know if the towns had the meeting. We had a meeting with the sheriff the other day. We're actually going to have more coverage than we have now. So I don't know if they've talked about it, but they have a special, this is going to be District 11 from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. And it's just that the term that we're not going to have any sheriffs out here is based upon what we were told is not accurate.
So, Dave, if I may comment on that, I'll break my own rule. So we've never said we're not going to have any coverage. The District 11, as opposed to having dedicated sheriffs for Kiowa, which is what we had contracted with, will be part of a larger district that runs from Kiowa, Seabrook, all the way to Edenvale.
Right.
And there will be potentially X number of deputies in that district. That's the same number of deputies that patrol that area now, but we also have additionally 2 dedicated sheriffs. So the issue isn't will we have coverage. The bigger issue is if we need a sheriff, what's the response time? It doesn't matter where they are on the island, it is less time than if they are at Edenvale. And that's the concern, is that she doesn't have to provide coverage on Kiowa. She'll say whatever you want to hear, but the fact is she won't have to provide it on Kiowa.
And I agree with what you're saying. I'm just saying that the interpretation of what we heard was not that. I just wanted to clarify it.
Oh, I'm sure it wasn't.
But the clarification is we never said that we don't have sheriff's coverage. We only said the coverage is going to be different if we don't do anything about it.
So anyway, but
Yeah, and I would just include, David, some of the interpretation that you heard didn't come from the town.
Okay, thank you. Todd Bonet, 3532 Shipwatch, a board member of Preserve Kiowa. I know the last thing you're looking for is additional work, but I do have a suggestion. You know, I am concerned that the island is woefully unprepared for a catastrophic event. I know that the town has done some work. You know, I guess I wonder if the town can do some work with Kika to make sure that the community overall is prepared for a catastrophic event. I'm on the board of the Seascape regime. We just found out that, you know, our deductible, our retention is going to go from, you know, roughly $800,000 to over $2 million. You know, and we're trying to work with our homeowners to help them understand, you know, how a condominium policy may include coverage for special assessments in the event of a catastrophic event, a named hurricane. You know, that to me is an example of how, you know, we as a community can be, I think, doing a better job of educating homeowners. I think there's an assumption that in the event of a catastrophic event that the community has sufficient deep pockets personally and as a community to deal with it. You know, I guess I question whether that's the case. I question that for Kika, quite frankly, and you know, I question it as individuals. So I just wonder if there are things that, you know, the town can be doing to, you know, educate the community. You know, if your house was built before X date, you probably don't have, you know, the right windows in place. You know, if you know, there's an email chain going around right now about, you know, education efforts about having to replace your roof. These are things that I think we can get homeowners out in front of. I think total cost of ownership on the island is definitely going up in large part because of increased property insurance. So I just ask you to consider doing something. You know, an example would be, you know, I'm sure that there would be some organization that could model the likely impact of a Cat 2, 3, and 4, you know, hurricane on the island that would allow us to think through what needs to be done. You know, a prior council member mentioned that the town does have in place a program to get the Causeway Bridge replaced and up and running if it was destroyed in a month. Can you imagine what the island would be like if it took 30 days for homeowners to get access to their homes after a catastrophic event when they couldn't get there for 30 days? And I just bring that up as an example. You know, Shannon White has mentioned that there aren't a lot of companies that provide bridge maintenance and support in the Charleston area. I would wonder, is the firm that you contracted with the same firm that Kiowa uses? Is it the same firm that other communities in the area utilize? And are we all, in a sense, dependent upon, just by way of example, a single firm that is incapable of dealing with their needs? So, you know, again, you're doing a lot of great work here, guys. And, you know, I commend you for it, but, you know, it's tough to put your time into something, preparing for something we all believe and hope won't, we hope at least won't happen. But, you know, I do think there are some things that the town can do to help educate and prepare the community in case we do face a catastrophic event. Thank you.
Your concerns here by all. I just want to make a comment about sorry the gentleman left. I'm serious about this. No, I didn't mean to denigrate attorneys, you know, at all. These are very interesting subjects when, now I'm looking at you two, three, whatever. These are like quasi-briefs that you guys write about anything, about what the subject is. I'm not an attorney. I didn't make nothing about that. For this mayor and future mayors who may or may not be attorneys, in my world, we relied on general counsel. Right, wrong, or indifferent. That's how we did things. That's how, you know, but it's a real interesting dynamic that is going on here. And so, I mean, if anybody, I'm just talking. I mean, if anybody has any profound ideas here, but so when the comment is you don't agree with us, well, but if you can't interpret, I don't know what I'm saying, if you can't interpret the opinion that we're getting from you, and we go to our counsel to give us what they think the opinion is relative to the issue, then who adjudicates it? Who says, well, it's this?
That goes to my point that if there are 2 points either way, and we had this, for example, when we did the expansion and appointment, there were obviously arguments back and forth, but the clearly legal way to do it was through an election. And I think if that's your answer, is to say, okay, if there's arguments both ways and we're not sure which way it is, you know, your council's saying one way, people in the community are saying a different way, can you figure out a way that's just clearly legal? Go that way.
I guess that's what I'm saying, sir. I'm just saying that's the conundrum that I find myself in, Stephanie finds himself in, you know, but I'm just.
So, but Brad, I agree with you. I agree with you. If there's a way that says this is clearly legal, that's how you ought to go, period, end of story. But interestingly, the meeting we had recently with the guy from the Municipal Association, who is an attorney, and he was advising us on issues of conflict of interest and ethics and among other things. I was astounded at how many questions we asked him and that Brad asked him for which he did not have any clear legal response, legally correct response. It was amazing how many times he said, well, I think the best way is X. And so I agree with you that if there is a clearly legal way and maybe not, this is the way you go. There's no doubt.
Conflicts, my thought is always, if it's close, if you're asking the question, which you're obviously asking a question, you know, is this a problem? And the answer is, I'm not sure, I think it is, then you go to the answer, which.
My point is, we sat in this room for 4 hours and listened to this guy say 25 or 30 times, there isn't a clear answer on this point. So you take your best advice from your counsel in those situations, but you know what? A different attorney might have interpreted a different way. And he was giving us examples where they gave an interpretation for a response. The people took that response, and then the Ethics Commission reversed it. Well, that was 2 lawyers having a battle of who had the strongest law degree, I guess, maybe, I don't know. But it was a different interpretation. So I agree with you that if there is a clearly legal way, that is the way to go.
Yeah.
But
the point is.
I don't want to hold her up. I'm sorry, Ms. Ma'am, go
Well,
ahead.
but the
Your
point,
comment.
let me comment on this. So, you know, if we would be, well, first of all, I think what we are discussing now would require that both sides can't agree, so then let's agree on disagree, but then stop. And I think a core problem that I have observed here is it goes on and goes on and goes on. And if we would acknowledge, and I'm actually for that, because in certain cases where I see, this opinion or this opinion, my favorite, outcome of it would always say, okay, we maybe made a mistake. We don't know it for 100%. Maybe we did. So we apologize if we really did, but it's not really worth probably to go further. But the more important part is then, but we have put in clearer ordinances or regulations or policies or management decisions so that this will never happen again. That would be my preference. The only problem is that I have no certainty that then we all can agree to disagree and the topic is put to rest.
Well,
That's my point, and that's my problem.
that's,
So 40 years working with attorneys as a banker and a CFO. To me, the best attorney is a business person, a coach who happens to practice law, because he can address that question. Okay, here's what the law says or doesn't say. Here's what the dispute is. What should we do?
That's why we have a town attorney.
Well, again, I mean, but the only reason I bring it up, Mr. Mayor, is that, you can't defer it completely to council, because a lot of this is more of a business decision, I would argue, in terms of what do you do, as opposed to purely a legal decision.
I agree with you. You're absolutely correct. The absence of a forum and the absence of some, again, as I said before, some level of adjudication. But I'm just saying these things do nothing but create hostility. Maybe when I say nothing, maybe there's an outcome that is being perceived as desirable or whatever. But I'm just saying, from my vantage point, it's on and they get the tone, the attitude. I'm sorry. Please go ahead. It's fine. But we've got one more thing to talk about.
Laura
Yes, ma'am.
McIlvaine, 146 Blue Heron Pond Road. I didn't stand up and complain about any ordinance to extend your term because I'm not sure what the heck you guys were supposed to do. I listened to the gentleman from the county, the lawyer, who explained what the legislation may say and may do to you if they pass it before you do something. So you either were going to truncate everyone's term by a year or you were going to extend it. So I don't know what you guys were supposed to do, but I didn't stand up because I thought it was as reasonable a solution as any, because it was kind of a parade of horribles when he explained it, what could happen if you did nothing. So I'm happy you did something. We didn't hear an update on the ARB task force, so sometime I think the community would like to know where that is going. I'm sure you're all aware of the demand letter that went to KICA, and that's an issue that I know.
I'm sorry, the what letter?
Demand letter that went to KICA. And I know that it didn't go to the town, but of course it very much involves the town because it involves the interpretation of your amended and restated development agreement and a provision in the waiver section 18A and what it means. And just throwing it out there, that same development agreement, the last paragraph, allows you, council, to request an interpretation by an arbitrator if there comes to be an interpretation dispute between you and the counterparty, the developer, to what that document means or a phrase in the document means or what it should be interpreted to mean. I throw that out just as a possible alternative. I don't know whether it's one you want to engage in or consider. The last thing I would say is things do go on and on. And sometimes I know that it's perceived that it's fueled by a certain number of people or it's fueled by the lawyers because they just like to joust. Maybe we just didn't get enough of that during our several decades and we just are used to doing it. I will tell you from my standpoint, I push and push and push because I have concerns that you will get sued and that's not in anybody's best interest. And some mandamus action will be delivered to you to do something or stop doing something. That's not in the community's best interest. Talk about something that's going to cause a fracture. So if someone sees an issue, certainly if I see an issue and I push it, for example, not following the ordinance that says only the mayor can negotiate. I'm not doing that because I want to hear myself talk. I'm doing it because we really can't have this council violating its own ordinances. I assume Michael's going to work on fixing that ordinance. And I assume that ordinance came in at a time maybe after the embezzlement or some other time when they thought it was necessary. It may no longer be necessary. But I don't stand up here and say these things just to bust your stones. I want you to know that. But it goes on and on when lawyers, intelligent people in this community, or business people don't believe you're getting to the right decision. And I totally sympathize that you have counsel and you rely on counsel. But as a former lawyer, I will tell you, your duty doesn't stop there. If you believe counsel's giving you one view and 20 other people are telling you something else, you might have a duty to inquire further. You can't just rely on your counsel. When the landscape looks 20 over here and counsel sitting here, you have a duty to inquire further and ask more questions. And I'm merely asking you to do that. Thank you.
Okay, well, we have jumped ahead. Now, could I have a motion to go into executive session pursuant to section 30-4-70, contractual real estate building and site located at 1 Kiowa Island Parkway to discuss the negotiation of the purchase and site of the Kiowa Island Real Estate Office?
So moved.
Your second. Okay, discussion.
I would simply reiterate the question I posed previously as to what it is that we are going to be discussing in executive session, and then what it is that we are intending to do under new business. It was my understanding that we were going to, and were presented a draft letter of intent that we would discuss. And that would have terms that we would discuss amongst ourselves in executive session and agree on to send to, as a first step, a non-binding letter of intent. But that's not what the new business item says.
So can I offer a suggestion,
yeah.
Brad? Because I'm kind of with you on this. I think the first thing we should, if we go, the first thing we should do is make sure we know why we're there. And if we can't clearly define that, then we should come out. I'm not far off from you there.
Yeah.
All in favor to go to enter?
I would like to make a few statements for the record about this. In partially repeating what I said earlier, but also to reinforce. I really want to make sure the community understands that what we are discussing here, both as it relates to the Kira building, the Kiowa Island Real Estate Building, but also the intersection and the Upper Beachwalker Drive and all of the topics that we have started to elaborate upon, is in an exploratory phase. There are no decisions, there are no final concepts, there are no deals of any kind. We are just starting to look into this. We had very productive meetings with the partners about this because they are the core, counterpart on this. I would hope that we will have the same productive meetings with KICA going forward. But I really want the community to understand that this entire area and what we are going to do with it is currently a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If we let this go, then we will probably never have a chance to fix our traffic problems, and for the rest of our lives on this island and the lives of our children and grandchildren, they have to look at a certain build-out of the Upper Beachwalker Drive parcels. So I think we have an opportunity here, and I would like to ask the community for the trust in what we are trying to accomplish and in our clear intentions to involve the community in any further step from here onwards. We have explored, we have tried to find out if there is something we can accomplish here. I think we are more and more getting to this point where we have that opportunity, and then it's the step forward. And I think this letter of intent, and Brett, we are exactly on the same page here, what that letter of intent should really entail. that's a very important step because we want to explore, is this really something now that we can accomplish? Is there a chance to have a reasonable price for this building? Because we believe at the moment it could really be absolutely essential for solving these problems. Then it's worth to spend our time and our money and going into very, detailed due diligence and traffic studies and bring in whoever has something, knowledgeable to say about these things. That's the important part. But I want the community to understand, if we don't use this opportunity right now, what's the alternative? Okay? And the alternative is that we will probably never again have a chance to fix our traffic problems. And we have to face, the entitlements of the property owners along the Upper Beachwalker Drive. And what they are entitled for was approved, unfortunately, from my point of view, in the Planning Commission a couple of months ago, as it relates to density and building heights, et cetera, up to 90-something dwelling units. That's the alternative. If we don't do anything, if we are not willing to compromise, that's what we're going to face. No solution for traffic and a significant, violation of aesthetics, as I believe, on the Upper Beachwalker Drive. So looking at the Kira building gives us a lot of interesting opportunities. The biggest one, of course, is to be able to use land from that property to mitigate traffic. That's probably the biggest topic. Now, we don't know that. We are speculating here, and we need the advice from experts. But, just looking at the map and looking at some very preliminary drawings, as the mayor said earlier, there's an opportunity. That's what we want to explore. The office, or the building itself, could be used in multiple ways. And I think, as I said earlier, the pass issuing has probably become less and less attractive because we are understanding that there are much better solutions for that. But it can be used by us. It can be used by Kika. You will remember the discussion on IKEA about moving certain activities to this building. So I think there is a multitude of options for us, the town, for Kika. We can think about this history or heritage museum that would find a place there. It's a lot that we can do with this. We need to figure it out, I agree, but we need to have the opportunity to figure this out. And then as it relates to Upper Beachwalker Drive, I think we will have the opportunity, and that's why it is linked together, to have a different concept that we can agree upon in a planned development with the Kia Island partners of mixed use, residential, office, amenities, and all of this resulting in a notable reduction of dwelling units, building heights, significant increase in setbacks, less curb cuts, etc. Again, all of this is preliminary, but the path forward, at least to me, and that's what I want to encourage the community, is very promising. Having this discussion now about the Kira building is essential for this, and it is intertwined with all of this. So that's my recommendation for the way forward.
Let's go. Let's go.
We had a motion, a second, all in favor?
Aye.
Let's go. We'll be brief, if you're foolish enough to want to stay. Yeah.
color time.
The other thing is, I'm gonna miss the end of happy hour.
Do you know how many happy hours I missed doing minutes?
Okay.
Could I have a motion to come out of executive session?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Could I have a motion?
I would like to propose a motion that we asked Brad Belt and Joe Wilson to draft for us a letter of intent for the Kiowa Island real estate property, ideally by separating out the property versus the property plus the building. And I would also like us to vote on asking our town administrator to update the independent appraisal to today's value.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Let the record show it was unanimous. Please.
That was the longest motion I've ever heard in my life.
I'm sorry. I'm German.
Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
We're adjourned.
Thank you,
you.
gentlemen.
That's good.